Alright, what up everybody, it's your boy the Infinite Dragon here, and welcome back to Witch on the Holy Night. If you're watching this on YouTube, you're watching an archive stream, be sure to check me out live. Link is always in the description down below, as well as a link to my Discord, which will let you know what I'm doing, what I'm thinking, how I'm feeling, all of that good stuff. As you can see, for my normal returners, I am no longer on the screen. I don't have my PNG, I don't have a thing, a layout. We still have that here. That's still around. However, I'm trying out a new thing. Hello. I'm trying out a new thing for these types of streams for, more immersion. You know what I mean? Trying to get a feel for things. So you guys are only going to be able to see the game. There are no pop-ups or notifications, as you guys may have noticed from Weeze's hello there not coming and playing on screen. So there's not going to be anything except for that little pop-up and thing to hit telling you to like, subscribe, and join the Discord in my voice, in the game, of course. So let's get started. Before that, though, Weeze, thank you for being first. Lucky, how are you doing? It's been a while since we've seen you around. You missed some shit. And Batra, how you doing? Open the game. Open the game. My hello that doesn't usually trigger during the commercials. Well, there you go. All right, I'm doing my setup where I'm not using my headphones. So if you guys hear any echo, please let me know, and I will try to tone the game accordingly. All right, where we last left off, at. Oh, hold on. Get my notes together so that way I can write down what we're doing. There we go. Where we last left off, we survived almost dying from the moon and Alice in Wonderland and whatnot, and then our co-protagonist Sojiro. I know there's a word for co-protagonist, but I can't remember what it is right now. He got trapped in a bottle like Tinkerbell, so we're gonna go ahead and continue now off of that. And so, Sojiro accepted his supervised life in the mansion, and that he would be living under the same roof as two professional mages. Having experienced firsthand how dangerous that life could get, he was finally at peace with the situation. Even if he did not seem like it, he had thought it through in his own way and come to a clear resolution. I think it's Duragonist or something along those lines. I think you're correct. Duragonist.
監視するとは言ったけど、どうやって宗十郎を監視するのか。そもそもあなたを監視する原因になった魔術とは何なのか。そのあたりざざっと説明させてもらうわ。
Perhaps he was brought up to listen closely to lectures about new information because Sojiro suddenly looked attentive. Alice, on the other hand, kept her mouth shut in silent defiance.
最初に言っておくと、あんたをここに住まわせる期限は決まってるから。
She looks very easy to make a me out of. That is a statement.
要はその期限まで誰にも私たちのことを喋らず、また勝手に死ななければ晴れて自由の身ってこと。
Well, I hope the second one is a given.
ね、そうよね、アリス。
そうね。私たちを怒らせなければ、そういう可能性もあるわね。
よし、いきなり話が食い違ってる。
Sojiro's head dropped, like he knew what was coming.
ちょっと黙ってて、アリス。あとあんたも黙ってろ。
She scowled at the two of them, already at her wit's end.
話を続けるけど、秘密保持のためにあんたを住まわせる場合、二次災害はどうしても避けられない。同じ家にいる以上、余計に秘密を見せることになるからね。
Okay, well, now that Aoko mentioned it, Sojiro could see her point. With their target of observation under house arrest, the disclosure of more confidential information was inevitable.
ちょっと待ってくれ。堂々巡りじゃないかそれ。
大丈夫、問題ないわ。だって最後にはここで暮らした記憶ごと私たちのことを忘れてもらうことにしたから。
忘れてもらう？
そう、公園での一件から丸ごと全部忘れてもらう。ルーンっていう魔術系統があるんだけどね、その中でサクッと記憶を忘れさせるものがあるのよ。非人道的であるのは変わらないけど、命を消す代わりに記憶を消すってことで妥協して。
Give me 1 second. Despite the fact that I've been fine literally all day, my allergies decided to act up at this exact second, so I can't breathe.
青崎、それは。
悪いけど反論は却下で、肝心の忘却のルーンなんだけど、私もアリスも専門外だから文献を探して習得するのに時間がかかる。つまりそれが監視の起源ってわけ。私たちが忘却のルーンを見つけるまで命を担保に口を閉じていてもらうわ。アリスはそんなややこしいことはせずに五感全部壊してしまおうなんて言ってるけど。しずきくん、リビングスタチューとか嫌でしょ？
Sojiro only understood about 80% of what Aoko had explained, and the last part about a living statue had gone straight over his head. He had tried it. Does he even know what a statue is? He had tried his best to visualize what Aoko was going on about, but the only thing he could conjure in his mind was an image of the mascot creature Kisti.
それは確かに嫌だな。
Aoko agreed with the bewildered Sojiro, neither one of them wiser to the other's misinterpretation.
とにかく遅くても1ヶ月で忘却のルーンは見つけ出せるだろうし、1回きりの実行ならプラス2ヶ月ぐらいでなんとかなるわ。それまであんたにはここで暮らしてもらうわけだけど、私たちについて無知のまま歩き回られると命の保証はできないのよ。そっちもこっちの事情を知らないのは気持ち悪いだろうし。なんで今から簡潔に現代の魔法使いの何たるかを教えてあげる。それで少しは私たちへの勘違いもなくなるだろうし。
Not that she thought this country bumpkin had any idea of old or new anyway. The thought brought a smug grin to her lips.
洋館のことは後にして、まずは私たちの立場についてね。あ、でも1から100まで理解する必要はないから。どうせ門外漢なんだし、感じ入ったことだけしっかり噛み締めておきなさい。
Sojiro nodded obediently to Aoko's professorial instructions. This was Aoko's way of telling him not to ask questions when he did not understand something. And though Sojiro had taken issue with her statement, he meekly obeyed, knowing better than to object now. Aoko nodded approvingly at his attentiveness and started her lecture. Her long lecture.
まず魔術師、魔法使いの話からね。
Alright, chat, this is where you gotta pay attention if you want to know what the hell is going on.
魔術と魔法の違いは宗十郎には関わりのない話だからしないけど、それぞれ別種のものだと思ってくれればいいわ。
If anyone wants to get into the Fate series, this explanation will also probably work for that as well. So, like I said, pay attention.
で、魔術師のことだけど、これは絶対条件として隠された存在でなくてはならないの。同業者に知られるのは仕方ないとしても、あなたみたいに関わりのない人間に知られるのは罪にあたる。ほとんど死罪クラスのね。なぜかっていうと、魔術ってのは隠されていないと力が薄れてしまうものだから。神秘の語源は閉ざすというギリシャ語だけど、魔術は限られた水着でなければ魔術でなくなってしまう。文明にとって未知なるもの、未開なるものは開かれていないからこそ恐怖に値するのと同じね。 知られたら迫害されるから隠すじゃないの。
This dude is the literal definition of wrong place, wrong time. Absolutely.
未知で亡くなった魔術師というより魔術ね。明かされた魔術は力を弱めてしまう。だから隠匿するのよ。何より私たちの未来のために。
魔術の仕組みはよくわからないけど、とにかく自分だけの秘密でないと弱くなるってことか。じゃあ青崎も弱くなってるのか？俺が見ちゃったから。
いいえ、別に。ここからはちょっと込み入った話でね。弱くなるっていうのはあくまで全体。それも随分と未来の話。個人単位では関係のない話よ。
This sounds like the Sith's rule of two.
汝隠匿すべしって不分律はこの大元の仕組みが形骸化していつの間にか絶対のルールになっているだけなの。文明社会の法律と一緒よ。犯罪不道徳を罰するのは人間的であろうとする意識の高さと、それとは全く別の全体の仕組みを守るための構造的な結論でしょ。犯罪が罰せられるのは野放しにしたらせっかく築いた社会がうまく機能しなくなるから。
They're quite literally gatekeeping magic. Yeah.
で、私たちにとって犯罪に当たるのは神秘の一般化、
Actually,
低俗化であって、不道徳とか殺人とかはまあそれぞれの良心次第ってことで基本的に罪にもならない。
if you've seen Jujutsu Kaisen, the way the magic system works is kind of similar to that, even though we did make the joke in a previous part. The way that it works is in the sense of we have to keep our magic in the family, basically. So if you come from a magic family, your life as a firstborn is to be magic. You don't have a choice. That's why Aoka is weird, because she has an older sister, but her older sister gave up magic and then forced her to do magic, which is why this is weird for her. She's in a very weird position.
そんなろくでもない連中にルールを敷いたのが魔術協会っていう集まり、組合みたいなものよ。魔術を普及の神秘とせよというのは魔術を魔術として永続させるために敷いたルールに過ぎないわ。
Unlike Jujutsu Kaisen, though, magic is not sexist.
けどその原則は絶対でさ、これを破った者は魔術世界にはいられなくなる。いえ、実際問題として生きていくのが困難になる。私たちは私たちのまあ魔術師としての命、そういうのを守るために目撃者であるあんたを消さなくちゃいけなかった。そこ同情とかしなくていいから。私たちの事情を知ったぐらいで遊園地のことを帳消しにしないでよ。私たちは私たちの判断であんたを殺そうとしたんだから、誰彼のせいってわけじゃない。恨むならきちんと私を恨んでちょうだい。ま、それはともかく、過去魔術師は職業として成り立ったぐらい社会に認知されていたけど、その魔術自体は墓まで持っていく秘密だった。それがどう歪んだかは知らないけど、現代ではその職業すら秘密にしなくてはならなくなった。そこまでしないと遠い未来魔術すら消費するだけのものに解体されると教会は恐れたのよ。自然界の仕組みもかつて天上の領域だった宇宙の運営すら私たちは人知で解き明かせるほどになった。人の手に余るもの、神秘という未知の領域にとって魔術が最後の砦になると教会の設立者は信じたのかもしれない。それとも魔術なんてもう意味がないって達観したのかもね。そんなわけで魔術師はその正体を隠して各々の秘技を伝えていった。他人に教えるわけにはいかないから必然的にその伝承者は子孫になる。
There seems to be some echo creeping in. That's actually way higher than it was supposed to be anyway. Let me know if it continues.
私もアリスもそうやって何代か続いた連中の末なのよ。 さっき言った魔術協会っていうのは、そんな細々と続いてる連中を束ねる一大組織。魔術師にとって司法の神ってところかしらね。協会もいろんな派閥に分かれるんだけど、大抵の魔術師はロンドンの魔術協会に属している。汝隠匿すべしっていうのも協会の三大原則の一つよ。魔術師が一般人に秘密を漏らすと協会から罰が下される仕組みになっている。そんな罰なんかなくても自分と血族が伝えた魔術のために目撃者は消さないといけないんだけど。
And that was the end of the first part of the lecture. Oko paused for a moment. I think I can actually make it a little bit louder. Let's put it at 80 and see what happens. Sojiro was doing his best to process the information.
次行くけどいい？
いいけど、その前に確認したい。魔術師が正体を隠すのは自分のためじゃなく魔術のためだったけど、最近では自分の正体を隠すことの方が重要になっている。そしてその決まりを破ると教会というところからお咎めが来る。つまり青崎たちもその教会に入っているのか？
いいえ、私たちはフリーよ。一応教会とつながりはあるけどね。単純に教会は最大勢力ってだけ。連中は頼まれもしないのに魔術世界全体の秩序を守ってるの。だから私たちが何であれ彼らとの関わりがないにしても魔術師としての決まりを破ったら罰しに来るわ。
わかった。大体飲み込めた。
よしよし。そうやって自分に必要な部分だけ手に入れなさい。じゃ、次は魔術について。と言っても、私自身語れるほど学んでいないんだけどね。
She says she's barely learned enough to talk about it, but she has a fucking magic gun. Her body is a gun that shoots magic bullets.
ごめん、こっちの話だから忘れて。さっきも言ったけど、現代において魔術は無意味なものになりつつある。ライターのない大昔なら火を起こせればそれは魔術として成り立つわ。けど今は何かと便利でしょ。あなたならよくわかると思うけど。
Sojiro nodded with a glum look on his face. He'd been made painfully aware of such conveniences. Difficult tasks that would occupy an entire day of work in the mountains could be performed easily here. For him, having been brought up in the mountains without electricity or running water, city life was by definition magic. He only wished it would not be such back-breaking work to adapt to said conveniences. I can't imagine being in a world where, like, everything you've ever done, everything you've ever learned can be done in like a fraction of the time. You know what I mean? I guess that's what they're trying to do with AI currently, but it doesn't work that way with AI as much as they wanted to.
でも道具を使わずに火を起こせるのは神様の仕事だと思うけど。
そのために積み重ねた手間は火炎放射器を手に入れるより面倒だとしても。
Sojiro wasn't sure how to answer Aoka. It would have been easy for him to ask Aoka how much accumulated effort she thought it had taken humans to imitate those gods, but he knew it would come across as an insult.
さっきのを見る限り、魔術ってのは何でもできると思ったけど、それは誤解なのか。
So you're telling me a heating unit taking a couple of hours to heat up a home could be done in 10 minutes with magic? Probably done less than that. It probably could be done instantly. I think when we were playing Fate, the first instances of just plain old magic was us seeing like the window had gotten broken and they used magic to fix the window. Like for like real life effort, we would have to like take out the window, replace the window, sweep up all the glass, all of that. She did it in like 2 seconds. He glanced at the glass bottle on the table. Mentally, he sighed in relief. He still had not come to terms with the fact that he had been trapped inside that tiny thing. Using magic to cook a perfectly cooked medium rare steak. Indeed. However,
それこそ誤解よ。万能じゃなければ誰が魔術なんて学ぶと思ってるの？
Uncle puffed out her chest as she chided him.
手間暇かかるけど魔術にできないことはないわ。中にはできていないけどできているように見せるみたいな何らかのイカサマはあるけどね。この世界に生まれた以上、その許容範囲でできないことなんてないの。そこで魔法が出てくるんだけど、それはまた改めて。私が言いたかったのは、魔術は奇跡を起こしているのではなくて、その過程が奇跡だってこと。結果が奇跡になるのは魔法の方なの。偉大な魔術師っていうのは、個人の魔術だけで旅客機飛ばしたりする人のこと。対して偉大な魔法使いっていうのは、今不可能なことを可能にする人のことよ。そういった意味じゃ、私たちは最後の魔法使いになるかもしれないけどね。
脱線してるわよ、青子。
Alice had been quietly listening until she muttered her rebuke, as if Aoko had crossed the line.
そこまで教える必要はないでしょう。しずきくんに教えるべきことは、私たちと暮らす上で危険になることだけじゃなかった。
悪かったわ。ちょい口滑らせた。ともかく魔術師っていうのは暇さえあれば魔術の実験をしてる連中で、自分の家系が伝えてきた秘技を守るためなら鬼でも悪魔にでもなる。必然その
Now they have to extra murder him.
工房って言うんだけど工房も魔術的な機構が積み重なって要塞みたいになっちゃうのよ。秘技を守るために入ってきた相手を問答無用で叩きのめす仕掛けとか。この洋館もそういった工房と同じなの。不用心に歩き回ってさっきみたいなことになったら私でも助けてあげられないから、暗闇には気をつけなさい。気がついたら鏡の中にいるとか本気であるから。
Sojiro so hoped they wouldn't provide him with the general... What? Sojiro so hoped they would provide him with the general idea of what to watch out for, but he passed, knowing that he was unlikely to get a straight answer.
枝葉から入っちゃったけど、要は私たちのプライベートに関わるなってこと。いくら最後には記憶を消すって言っても、それを見られた段階で消すしかないものもあるから。
Jesus.
なるほど。この中にもルールがあることはよくわかった。他に注意すべきことは。
His eyes wandered as he trailed off mid-sentence, pondering. He understood that the mansion was more dangerous than outside, and the magecraft needed to stay secret. But the explanation seemed to contradict his current problem. For starters, how had he managed to witness something that they took such pains to keep hidden?
すまない。話の腰を折るんだけど、魔術師は教会という組織で結ばれてるんだろ？なら、どうして青崎はあんな人形に襲われたんだ？あれの持ち主が魔術師なら、君たちは味方同士で争っていることになる。何か説明が不足していないか？
それは最後にしようと思ってたのよ。普通はここまでの話だけで眉唾者っていうか笑い飛ばすっていうか、いくら経験済みだからって魔術なんてもんをあっさり受け入れるなんてできないっていうか。
Aoko scratched her head as though troubled by how Sojiro could take every word at face value. Well, I mean, he did literally see it. Across from her, Alice's face betrayed no expression, but she shared the same opinion.
おかしいのか？それ。
おかしいわよ。そもそもあんたは第一ステップから変だった。
I mean, not really. The city in and of itself is weird to him, so him seeing magic is... I mean, the misunderstanding came from the fact that he saw them do shit, just saw them do literal magic, and then he was like, oh, I guess everybody can do that. I mean, if I saw someone do magic in front of my eyes, I would also believe them, right? But like, that's not even the main part. This is something that she herself understands. The city itself is magic to him. Like, the fact that you can drive a 1 ton hunk of metal and ride that around is magic to Sojiro. So the fact that people are shooting fireballs out of their hands is also just magic. It's not anything different to him. He's already confused.
普通は驚いたり怖がったり無視したりするものなのに、どうして魔法使いだなんて言った私を信じたの？
In retrospect, this question should have been posed at the House of Mirrors. Back then, though Sojiro was surprised by seeing the phenomena of mage traps for the first time, he showed no surprise or discomfort toward Aoko, the mage wielding it. Feeling the probing stares of the two girls, no, the two mages, made Sojiro feel uneasy. From where he was standing, their suspicion was suspicious in and of itself.
なんでも何もない。青崎、山ではね、あるものはあるのが当たり前なんだよ。理由をつけられるだけの知識がなかったからにしても、実際に見たものを信じない。なんて
If
ことは
only
ない
that
ん
was
だ。
actually true. Wait, what gender are you? Guy, girl, something in between? Mage?
それに君も言ったろ。
Kirby?
あなたにとっては魔法もライターも同じものなんだろうって。
Though they weren't really the same to him anymore, he added quietly before shutting up. What he said about those innocent days in the mountains had come from the heart. And the words resonated with not only Aoko Ozaki, but also Alice Kuonji. It was something everyone should have, principles to stand by. Indeed, to this boy, those words were an unshakable truth.
あるものはあるか。
She was impressed, if only slightly. If this boy, no matter how much of an outlier he was, could accept the things around him, he would be able to get through this just fine.
そうね。宗十郎はそうなのよね。簡単に信じてもらえることが信じられない。なんて、私たちの方がどうかしてたわ。
Imagine just a passerby when they were doing the whole Alice in Wonderland thing. That motherfucker would have just left and then been like, that was a weird thing that I think I saw. I must have been daydreaming. Much like when Aoko met Sojiro for the first time. In fact, that's not what that said at all. In that classroom on his first day, Sojiro took everything that was happening in his stride. The memory brought a bitter smile to Aoko's face.
Ja, 気を取り直してっと。
Excuse me. Hopefully that wasn't loud. I turned away from the mic, so maybe it didn't even pick up.
宗十郎の疑問だけどね。魔術師もいろいろあって、教会に属していない連中もいるの。
So is he gonna live in a shed? I actually wouldn't put it past them to put him in the shed.
こういった連中は教会の目を盗んでやりたい放題で、利益目的で他の魔術師に喧嘩を売ってくる。そんな連中にとって、私たちは都合のいい格好のカモなのよ。私たちは教会と協定関係にあるだけで門下ってわけじゃないから。私たちが殺されたところで教会は助けてくれないしね。
でも魔術師が魔術を使うのは禁じてるんだろ？
それが公にならないのなら教会は目をつむるわ。むしろバレなければ魔術師同士の争いを奨励してるぐらいよ。技術も使わないと錆びるってね。ま、私たちが襲われてるのはそれとは別の話で、単に土地を持ってるからなんだけど。
土地ってこの家？
まさか。この三崎市一帯の管理地の権利を持ってるのよ。私とアリスは。
管理地ってつまり土地の利権
Dazzled, Sojiro looked away. He was sure he could see a halo of light around Aoko. He had only been renting an apartment for 2 weeks, but he was already aware of how magnificent the prospect of owning land in the city might be.
おお
The word Sojiro was trying to articulate was rich. He shook all over with an emotion he did not fully grasp.
悪いけど、 そういうんじゃないから。私たちで土地って言ったら、魔術師としての霊地の所有権、支配権のことを言うの。
That might as well be the same thing.
うちはマイナーだけど、古くからこの辺りに根を下ろしてた魔術師で、三崎町もうちの管理下ってわけ。
They must love that district minigame in Yakuza 0. I've been thinking about playing that game again because that was like the first game I played for stream when I started streaming.
管理地っていうのはね、霊的な力が歪んで集まりやすい土地のこと。そういう土地は昔から貴重で、魔術の実践、実験には不可欠でもある。
So you're rich. That's basically the same thing.
成功への絶対条件は、優れた霊地、堅固な工房、多くの弟子たちってね。魔術師たちにとって、土地付き館付きの住み家を持つのは、一つの野望なんだから。
Sojiro let her continue while wondering exactly who these two girls were to have achieved both ambitions already.
でも、その管理地は大部分が教会に仕切られてて、もう余っている土地はないの。はぐれ魔術師や土地のない魔術師は、教会に毎月寄付金を納めて土地を借りるしかない。ま、手よく教会のお偉いさんたちに尽くす働き蜂ってところね。でも、ここの土地は何百年も前から青崎のものだから、教会とは関係がないの。ここまで言えばわかるでしょ？そういったフリーの連中からすれば、私たちの管理地はこの上ないごちそうなんだって。
Sojiro nodded to himself, unsure whether to call the conversation mundane or outright disturbing.
よくわかった。青崎たちは土地の奪い合いをしているんだな。
そういうこと。ただ、岬の管理地はマイナーのさらにマイナーだから、やってくる挑戦者も三流ばっかりよ。今回の敵だって、どっかの三流魔術師が、ここなら楽に奪えると思ってやってきたんだろうし。ま、それもあんたの乱入で急戦してるんだけど。
管理地の話はそれで十分よ、青子。しずきくんも、他に魔術師がいると分かってくれたようだし。危険があるとすれば、私たちの戦いに彼が巻き込まれる可能性だけど。
Can a mage marry to a non-mage, or do they have to keep it between mages? There is no reason as a mage that you would want to marry a non-mage because you want your bloodline to be strong. Like, when I say they'd keep it in the family, I really mean that. Like, that shit is gross. Like, for mages in this world, your primary function as a mage is to better your magecraft. That is your primary function. Everything else is secondary. You have kids so you can further your magecraft. Are they in the royal family level of gross? Not that we've seen, but I don't doubt it that somewhere in this world lore that exists.
それは大丈夫でしょ。だってこいつ、魔力のかけらもないじゃない。魔力感知には引っかからないし、番犬以下の人間は戦力って言わないから、狙われることもないだろうし。私たちはただ、忘却のルーンを見つけるまで、こいつを逃がさなければいいだけでしょ。
Well, hello. How you doing? Alice suddenly stared her partner down. Their ideas of involving Sojiro differed greatly in both gravity and risk. Alko's lack of experience had led her to believe that Sojiro would not get directly involved in any fighting. It was an honest and rational thought. Alko despised wasted action, so it was natural for her to expect the same frugality from her enemies. However, there were those in this world who could not tell right from wrong until it was too late.
先のことは誰にもわからないから。その時になって後悔がなければいいけれど。
With a gloomy sigh, Alice came to her feet.
ちょっと、何のために長話したと思ってるのよ。一番重要なあんたの意見、聞いてないんですけど。
あなたがあなたの方針を守るというのならそれでいいわ。私も好きにするだけよ。
Alice glided soundlessly to the door. As the girl in black opened it, she paused, barely lit by the dim corridor. Then, without warning, to the rhythm of her footsteps, the small glass bottle floated into the air and shattered without mercy.
あの時こうしておけばよかった。
Her sharp tone made Sojiro's face go pale. Alice's voice was so quiet, it was hard to tell if she was being serious or mocking him.
私も言い忘れていたけど。
What the fuck? That was my favorite glass. She icily eyed them before turning away, and in a voice even colder than her gaze, stated,
まだ認めていないから。
Her frigid departure seemed to forebode the many difficulties that lay ahead.
たく、往生際が悪い。
Uncle leaned back on the sofa while hurling abusive epithets. Her face looked even more irritated than usual.
見逃すのとここに住まわせるのは別問題よって。じゃあそれ以外にどんな方法があるってのよ。譲る気もなさそうだし。
I don't know what that means.
実力行使に出るかもね。
Oh, I was like, what? I don't know. The toilet? What is going on here? Toka, yeah. Sojiro threw a wary glance at Aoko while she grumbled. He wondered what Alice's show of defiance meant, shattering the glass bottle like she did.
宗十郎には記憶をなくしてもらうってことで話をつけた
I
け
knew
ど
you were gonna make a JoJo joke.
心の底から納得してないってことでしょ。
A Joe joke, if you will.
アリスにしちゃ珍しく他人を意識してたけど、やっぱりここに住まわせるとなると難しいみたい。寝てる分には良かったけど、起きてるあんたを見たらこう、えも言わぬ刺激心を刺激されたとかさ。
That will not stand. Ha 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 ha.
気をつけてね、宗十郎。あの子、あんたを殺しに来るかもしれないから。
If anything, Aoko's warning was an indication that persuading Alice had hit a dead end.
なんか状況はあの夜からあまり変わってないようだね、青崎。
She shot him an unconcerned look in reply.
そうじゃないぞ。青崎の次はあの子がやる気満々じゃないか。さっきみたいな目にあったら逃げることもできない。こういうの生殺しって言うんじゃないか。
No, you were very wrong about that.
そうならないように努力するのね。ま、アリスの理由は遊園地の時ほど切迫したものじゃないから、そのうち諦めてくれるとは思うんだけど。
青崎の時とは違うアリスの理由？
ええ。遊園地の時は秘密厳守のためだったけど、それは一応解決してる。あんたが底抜けに律儀なやつだってのはアリスだってもう分かってるし。なんで秘密厳守云々であそこまで反対する理由はないの。あの子は単にね、ここに住んでほしくないだけなのよ。それだけでアリスはあんたを殺したがってる。
What's that mean? What does what mean? You have to use more words. She said so matter-of-factly, her eyes cold and serious. Sojiro had hoped for a trace of deceit or exaggeration, but alas, the desire to murder him? The desire to murder him. That wasn't code or for anything. She wants to kill him.
確かにあの子はそんな素振りだったけど、変だね。それならもっと他の手段を取ればいいのに。
Yeah, but see, the thing is, King, if he attempts to leave the house, he will actually die. So you could either live with someone who wants to kill you or actually die. That is your choice right now. Perhaps feeling guilty about putting Alice out, Sojiro looked uncharacteristically concerned. Aoko immediately knew what his words really meant.
例えば記憶を消す魔術が見つかるまでさっきの小瓶の中に閉じ込めておくとか。
The apathy in her voice until now was gone. Sojiro answered with a simple nod. In truth, it was undoubtedly the easiest solution for all parties concerned. However,
宗十郎、私約束は破らないの。
I hate doing that. She hated taking the easy way out. And that quiet fury was clear in her soft words. As to where that fury was directed, Sojiro was acutely aware. The pain in his chest made him regret making her say those words.
すまない。考えが足りなかった。
Not the yandere life? It's not quite like that either. Yandere implies that they like him. His sudden apology caused her usual sullen expression to return. Aoko had not appreciated how angry she was, let alone the reason for it. To her, his apology had come out of nowhere.
あんたって本当わかんないわね。なんでそこで謝るのよ。
And why is he here? Because she doesn't want to kill him because he's a good dude. But like, there's two things going on here. This character in front of us right now, Aoko understands that he's kind of at the wrong place at the wrong time, so she doesn't want to kill him. However, it would just be easier to kill him. It would literally solve all of the problems that they are having right now for him to just die. Also, yandere means they want to murder others for them, not them. Yeah. She stared at Sojiro, unblinking.
あれそうだな。自分でもよくわか
I'm
んない。
back from not zoning out.
多分
Welcome back.
そういう気分になったからだろう。
Even in saying he was not sure, Sojiro had answered honestly. Aoko was at a loss for words.
ただ、青崎の言いたいことは分かった。約束を守るっていうことは、結果じゃなく家庭を守るってことなんだな。
He shot her a brazenly honest smile. That smiling face, filled with blissful ignorance, almost made her smile back instinctively.
当たり前じゃない。オチだけ合ってればいいなんて恥ずかしくてできないでしょ。
Aoko attempted to cover her embarrassment with a quick retort. Though unintentional, having her true feelings exposed like that made Aoko a little uncomfortable. Finding offense in something was second nature to Aoko. Being made to feel uncomfortable was not. Though far from being unhappy at the remark, she turned away from its speaker. To disguise her perceived shame, Aoko started up the conversation again.
あなたを見逃すって言うなら気持ちの問題じゃなくてちゃんと状況もそうなるようにするのは当たり前なの。宗十郎をここに住まわせることがあの約束を守ることになるんなら厄介なアリスだって言い伏せるわよ。脅かすだけならまだしもずっと瓶付けなんてさせられるわけないでしょ。
そっか。青崎があの子を説得しない素振りなのは、もうできるだけの説得をした後だからなのか。あ、それで彼女とは冷戦中なんだ。
別にあんたのためじゃないわ。私は私のために約束を守ってるだけだし。
Okay, you realize how dumb you just sounded, right? Like you're literally doing it for him.
お察しの通り、私のやるべきことはもう終わってるし、あとはそっちが努力する番だから勝手にすれば。
Huh? He replied, tilting his head.
あのね、いい？同居案を何とか認めさせることができるのは私だけだから、2日間ぶっ通しでアリスを言い伏せもした。けどそれ以上は無理。私、 ここから先はノータッチだから。しばらくはアリスから守ってあげるけど、その間にあの子にあんたを認めさせることはあんたにしかできないんだからね、宗十郎。
なんと
Sojiro had not expected that at all. Alice Kuonji, the girl in black who kept everything at arm's length. If Aoko was a modern-day mage in hiding, then Alice was a bona fide witch from the Middle Ages.
青崎、君自分がどれだけ難しいことを言ってるか分かってるか？
そうね。私もこの件に関してだけは同情するわ。
Aoko stood up from the sofa. This was the end of the discussion, at least for now.
私たちがどんな人間かはおおよそ分かったでしょ。魔術に関してはこれ以上立ち入らない方があんたのためだから、説明はここまでね。で、肝心の今後の方針だけど、3ヶ月間ここで暮らす。
You have a set date on that?
当初の目標というより最初の試練は、なんとかアリスに同居人として認めてもらうこと。
試練って言った。今そういう類のことを言った。
ごまかしてもいいことないでしょ、この手のことは。うまくいかなきゃ粉々なわけだし。
With her cold-blooded remark, Aoko started walking toward the door.
あ、そうそう。宗十郎の部屋だけど、3階に用意しといたから。2階のホールの裏側に階段があるから使って。ここは寮ってわけでもないし、時間は自由に使いなさい。ただし、西館にだけは入らないようにね。東館は私が借りてるから比較的安全だけど、それでも歩き回らない方が無難だわ。ま、基本安全なのはあんたの部屋とここだけよ。
中の説明ってまさかそれだけ？
That's really all you need to know. I don't know about you guys, but like, if I'm in a situation where my fucking life is in danger, I'm not gonna move anywhere. I'm gonna stay in the drawing room, in my room, and that's it. Because anywhere else I could fucking die, so I'm not going anywhere else.
青崎はいろいろおかしい。魔術なんかよりもっと大事な説明があると思う。
He desperately called out to her as she began to leave the drawing room. Aoko could not help but pity Sojiro.
せめてほら、案内とか。
面倒なんでパス。おのぼりさんを案内するなんて2回もやれば十分よ。
My dad ordered me some food because he's not home, but the person delivering delivered it to the neighbor, so I had to go over and get it, and luckily I didn't get shot. Good job! Although you'd be unlikely to get shot anyway, you're white.
起きたばっかりだし、とりあえず今日は部屋で休んだら。朝になったら学校まで案内してあげるから。もっとも、私もそう暇じゃなし。そばについてあげられるのは、期末試験が終わるまでってことで。1週間以内にアリスと仲良くなるなり、弱みを握るなりしないと、まあ、あれよね。
That's kind of mean. With barely a wave of a goodbye, the student council tyrant walked out. Unconsciously clenched the hand he had raised. Left all alone, he was at a complete loss. Then, as if to encourage him, with the sound of lightly fluttering wings, a blue robin appeared out of nowhere. Isn't that like... I mean, I know it's literally magic, but like, isn't that like not possible? Aren't robins inherently red? The tiny, chubby bird innocently looked Sojiro up and down. The blue robin, a bird said to bring happiness according to folklore, flapped its little wings as if to cheer him on. Then, with a flutter, it mercilessly flicked off the lights. Leaving Sojiro alone in the drawing room, Aoko returned to her bedroom. She closed the door to her room, and as soon as she sat on her bed, she was overcome by an unexpected wave of exhaustion. Sojiro had no way of knowing, but she had been preparing for war. In the event that Alice impulsively pulled out a ploy, Aoko had to be ready to react in an instant. Where's the wet room? If that's a joke, I don't understand what it is. She sighed heavily, but not from the fatigue she felt at fighting with
ちょ
Alice.
っと突っぱねすぎたか？
She frowned a dejected frown. What weighed on Aoko's mind was not Alice.
でも甘くするのはあいつのためにならないし。基本おとなしくしてもらった方がいいわけだし。
It would be trouble if he wandered around like he owned the place, after all. The dry room and the wet room? What? Is the drawing room, not the dry room, the drawing room? The safest thing for him would be if he holed up in his room, too scared out of his wits to leave it.
青崎は味方だなんて勘違いされても困るしね。アリス同様、人手なし扱いされた方が楽だわ。
She nodded to herself, agreeing with her take on the situation. For the most part, it was a sound plan. I'm reading too fast. If there was a problem, it would be this.
すまない青崎、一つ聞きたいことがあるんだが。
Not 10 minutes had passed since leaving him in the drawing room. For Sojiro to shirk off what she had said and visit her room so fast, it was like he had no sense of danger at all.
実は外に出たいんだ。
Of course, he would ask to leave the house. Oko lacked the energy for a sarcastic barb.
洋館の中は歩き回らないし、用を済ませたらきちんと戻ってくる。ただ、門限とかあったら聞いておこうと思って。
でも、アルバイトには行くのよね。
How did you know? Sojiro exclaimed in surprise. When it was Aoko who desired to display her shock at him.
まあいいわ。基本、午後10時まで。その時間には必ず屋敷にいること。その後は夜勤に出かけるなり、庭でバーベキューするなり、何でも好きにしていい。それと、玄関に鍵はかかってないから。
Damn, y'all are that confident?
気のせいじゃなければだけど。青崎、すごく怒ってないか？
あんた相手に気を使った自分に呆れ果ててるだけよ。外に出るのはいいけど、その前にこの錠剤飲んで。
It's the girl with red hair and the boy, but the girl has no red hair. I don't know if you actually saw not the last stream of this, but the stream before that. She did have red hair for a little bit. She also used true magic. Sojiro took the purple pill from her outstretched hand and dubiously put it in his mouth. He told himself that it must have been some kind of medicine.
それじゃあ行ってくる。いろいろありがとう、青崎。
He didn't question the fucking pill that she... Okay.
あっそ。今度は窓から出ていかないでよね。
Sojiro laughed himself all the way to the foyer, unsure of what exactly he had found funny. Oko watched him go, both indifferent and amazed all at once.
ま、予定が半日早まっただけか。あの薬を飲ませるの、明日の朝にしてあげようと思ったのに。
What is the pill, though? She huffed, ruffling her hair in exasperation, and returned to her room. Discerning what made Sojiro tick was a waste of brain matter. In all luckiness, he was more concerned about missing 2 days of work than his own well-being after being bedridden for 2 days. With a day's work behind him, Sojiro returned to the mansion.
よし。どこを探しても、2階のホールから上がれる階段はここだけだ。
He didn't even make it halfway down the hall before kneeling over from the poison in the pill. He really just trusted her, just took that shit. It was just before midnight. This was the scene that awaited him beyond the rickety staircase. much surprised Sojiro, or rather being surprised had come to be normal to him. This scene, however, was enough to leave him speechless. The room allotted to Sojiro. No matter how he looked at it, no matter how he ran it through his mind, without a shadow of a doubt, an attic. This treatment stirred a tinge of anxiety in him. Just as he was about to flop onto the taut sheets of his bed, wondering if he could make this work despite his share of other problems, he noticed an awkward courtesy, so meager as to be useless.
寒かったら重ねて使うこと。これはサービスとする。
They gave him a fucking thin fleece blanket. The message in the memo pointed to the meticulous personality of the author. The bed had been perfectly prepared. Carefully setting aside the blanket that had been painstakingly placed on the edge of the bed for him in case he needed it, he looked up at the sky. Though faint, the stars twinkled through the skylight. For a mountain boy, that meager light was more than enough for him. The stark contrast with the drawing room had caught him off guard, but now that he had collected himself, it was not so bad. Type of shit Joker got on LeBlanc. See, the thing is that the thing that Joker got in LeBlanc was much nicer. It was just a storage room before. This is actually like an unfinished attic. He could actually freeze to death in here. This room fits his personality. Even if he was not used to the building, he felt more at ease here than he did in any building in the city. Perhaps it because it was built on a hill surrounded by woods. The atmosphere here was a little closer to the mountains where he used to live.
でも、家の中に霧が出るのはどうなんだろう。
See? It's fucking winter. He crooked his neck, pondering over the spectacle he had witnessed. On the way to his room, Sojiro had encountered what looked like a fog in the foyer on the second floor. The misty fog drifted into a portion of the corridor, reminding him of a swarm of mosquitoes. That's not comforting at all. As he stared at it, he swore he could make out a strange landscape, and as he moved closer to get a better look, again, out of nowhere, here inside the mansion, a little blue bird darted purposefully in front of him.
鳥?
A bird caught his attention, stopping him in his tracks. When he looked to check on the fog again, the strange scene had disappeared. Hyperthermia magic.
隙間でもあるのかな。明日青崎に聞いてみるか。
My magic is that you freeze to fucking death. The end. He muttered to himself as he sat on the bed. Meager as it was, the starlight peeping in through the skylight calmed him.
これなら。
Exhaling slowly, he laid down. For the time being, he had the essentials needed to live, and his bed was many times softer than it appeared. Thinking his worries seemed smaller than they were, he quickly drifted off to sleep. That was the story from when he opened his eyes to when he fell asleep. Just like that, the short night following the long night was over. For one thing was true. Sojiro was an optimist to a fault, but it wasn't the end of the world. Now let us rewind 5 hours prior to his glutton for punishment going to bed. To this glutton for punishment going to bed. Alright, what's going on with Oloko and or Alice? It was 7 o'clock in the evening, just after the unproductive discussion between the two mages and the boy had ended. Leaving her roommate and the intruder in the drawing room, the girl walked alone through the foyer. Hey, he no longer has to pay rent? That's not true. He does still have to pay rent. Just not to live here. From there, she headed to the West Wing. These were Alice Kuonji's personal chambers in which even her roommate Aoko Ozaki seldom dared step foot. The foyer was illuminated only by pale moonlight. Hard footsteps echoed through the dreary moonlit lobby. In such mansions, in Japan, there was no custom for removing shoes at the door. Hence, Alice crossed the foyer in her boots. She only removed them when she relaxed in her bedroom. Taxpayer magic. Suddenly, she remembered something from her childhood. She used to enjoy the feeling of cold hardwood floor on her bare feet and would walk around the foyer on particularly sunny days. After her father affectionately scolded her for it, she never did it again.
そうだったわね。青子は結局守らなかった。
She let out a quiet sigh. Alice's new roommate, whom she took on after coming to Japan, would not comply with her instructions.
落ち着かないものはしょうがない。
Aoko could say, changing into her slippers. Aoko might have found it natural to do so given that she lived in a typical Japanese house through middle school, but every time Alice heard her flip-flopping through the foyer, she wanted to cancel their cohabitation. Welcome back, Lucky. Magic tax evasion. By now, Alice was not particularly bothered by it anymore. Human adaptability was remarkable at times and ungracious at others. The emotional attachments of the past had proved far too brittle under the weight of reality. A little blue bird was perched on the banister. Its tiny chirping made Alice stop and look its way.
今夜は放っておくわ。今は青子の問題よ。
The lack of feeling in her voice made the bird tilt its head as it sang. It was thrilled, as though questioning its master's uncharacteristic leniency.
約束は約束よ。今夜ぐらいは多めに見ないと。青子と彼はそれだけの活躍をしたのだし。
She said to the bird, a voice betraying her discontent. If you win, I'll let you go. She would keep that promise in spite of the unquenchable desire to fight that burned in her chest.
でも、その後の処遇は別の話。条件付きのゲームに勝ったぐらいで、いつまでも得意げでいられるのは心外だわ。
Perhaps it was perfectionism born from fastidiousness, but, despite her prim demeanor, Alice Kuwanji was a sore loser. It did not matter to her whose magecraft was superior. Losing the game had proven hard to move on from. So I've read 7 books in the last month. 2 were tragic, and 4 were a series I loved and lost when I turned the last page. I'm perhaps foolishly choosing to read yet another tragedy, and will likely not recover. Welcome to the club. I know this game is gonna fucking blow my mind somehow. I'm gonna want to think about the way storytelling is and how it's done in stories forever changed. I know that's gonna happen to me. Lucky, you should actually know, because I didn't realize you were a fan of Fate. This is the same people who made Fate. This is the same dude. So you know some crazy ass plot twist is gonna happen through the middle of this. You could tell? Fair enough. We're all insane here, it's true. The little bird fluttered its wings in agreement. Drinking in Alice's contempt, it was itching to dive bomb the invader. It looked like a soldier saluting a superior officer as it preened itself. The blue bird turned to face its master. Its light-hearted tweeting seemed to display a desire to deal with Sojiro first thing in the morning.
そうね。理由さえできたのなら、瓶なり本なりに入ってもらいましょう。
Looks exactly like Artoria, but with black hair. I suppose the art style is similar, but doesn't Artoria have doesn't Saber have a braid in her hair? Or did I imagine that? Except her words lacked any bite. On the face of it, they were the chilling kind one might come to expect from a witch's lips, but then again so tame to remind you of a certain robin's flapping.
しばらくの話よ。けど、それも一時だけ。私の我慢も長くは続かないし。だいたい、青子も人にかまけてい
The
られ
other
る立
character,
場じゃない
Aoko, looks exactly like Tosaka.
いつかもすれば思い知るでしょう。そうすれば。
When that time came, expelling him would be simple. Alice was well aware of her roommate. Wait, what? Alice was well aware her roommate was a pragmatist with no vision. The situation she created would not allow her to wait around. She could only afford to protect that boy for 3 or 4 days at most. Beyond that, Alice sensed Aoko would crack and say something like, "You take care of this, Alice."
それまで待つか、あるいは私の我慢が効かなくなるか。どちらにしても結果は変わらないわ。
I mean, original Arturia, who was the main character, and summoned King Arthur prototype, was a man and far stronger than Arturia in the main story, apparently. I don't know anything about that. I only played the original Fate, and I saw the fucking recent anime, Fate Strange something, Fate Strange Fake. That's what it's called. I do not know if Naomi is alive. Alive? Live. Alice Koanji would suffer no more irritations, and protecting a witness, let alone allowing them to live in her mansion, was an indignity. Basha, do you know if Naomi is alive? Probably dead as hell. Dead as fuck. Dead as disco. Alice looked up, fascinated by the dense fog that had crawled into the foyer. Above the fireplace was a single mirror. Roughly 3 feet in diameter, it decorated the wall where one might find a painting. Its surface was faintly clouded and vaguely reflected in the foyer's appearance. She's in and out, that's what if that's what he's referring to. I think he meant live currently. Fate Strange Fake, I find it funny Gil got slimed first, considering I actually kind of liked him in this one. Fuck Gil, all my homies hate Gil. I'll be right back. I gotta use the bathroom. I return. Fate Apocrypha? I don't actually know what that one is. I don't know what that one's about. Lucky, if you're still here, might I interest you in some Kamen Rider? It doesn't matter which one you watch, they're all gay. Its surface was faintly clouded and vaguely reflected in the foyer's appearance.
スナークをなくした影響でしょうね。鏡の機能、しばらくは制御できないみたい。
Some of the Kamen Riders are literally just on YouTube, so you could just type in Kamen Rider and find one and then watch it. They're all gay, somehow. I think the one that's the least gay is 01, but like it's still pretty gay. The little bird joyfully chirped at its master's mumbling. The bird attempted to imply that there was no need for her to lift a finger, none of the nuisance would fall into the mirror of its own accord. Or perhaps. It was cool? Okay, maybe I'll look into it. I've been on my Kamen Rider kick, so I'm currently doing that, but I mean, Fate is fucking awesome, so. Had the little bird had not sang, Alice would have come to the same conclusion. For some reason, she recalled an earlier conversation.
これでも一番無難だと思う。
Good morning, Ryder! In response to her question, the boy inside the bottle shrugged his shoulders and answered. From his perspective, the city and the mansion were no different. It seemed that having just moved from the countryside, everything was something he had never seen before.
自慢できることじゃないが、まだ書き物さえ満足にできないし、都会のルールは複雑すぎて、何が正しいのかさえ区別がつかない。
I miss Saber. More than embarrassment, his voice was full of resentment. He was angry about something, though Alice could not tell what. Hot take, every writer in Fate is gay? I've only seen 2. And there's no way Medusa is straight, it was Greece, so...
だから、どこにいても危ないことに変わりはないんだ。極端な話、道を歩くだけでも、人と話すだけでも不安になる。俺は、どこでだろうとうまくやっていける保証はないんだよ。 けど、ここにはそんな奴に気を使ってくれる人がいる。気遣ってくれる理由は物騒なものっぽいけど、それは本当に贅沢なことだと思うんだ。
All writers are artistic. That's not what they're talking. We're talking about a different writer. But that is also true, technically. Her eyes welled up ever so slightly. Those soft words were something she could not brush off, because they made sense to her. Given that everything in the city was a danger to him, nothing had changed after coming to the mansion. In reality, he had no reason to fear this place in particular. If anything was different from the outside, it would be that someone here was his ally. With that view, he had been entirely sincere. His explanation hadn't contained any flattery towards Alice Kuonji, I would assume this is supposed to be nor pandering to Oko Ozaki. He was simply speaking from the heart. I like it here.
今、鏡に迷い込まれるのは迷惑ね。
Astolfo is not autistic. We don't know. He could be.
鏡の機能は侵入者の探索に専念させたいし、彼が迷い込みそうになったら止めてあげて。
The bird shook its feathers at her strange instruction. Alice looked away from the mirror and continued her walk. The bird chirped in protest.
あなたの仕事よ、ロビン。それぐらいの役には立って。
He's a femboy, not autistic. Actually, I'm sorry to inform you, but if he's a femboy, he is also autistic. Leaving the bird with the icy retort, she vanished into the west wing. All that remained was the moonlight, and the little blue bird trembling at a perilous prospect of unprecedented change. Oh, okay, the chapter's done. Are you for real? Majide? For real? Okay. If someone's a fanboy, there's a 0% chance they are neurotypical. It's true. I don't make the rules. You've been enjoying Star Force? That's good. Once long ago, I saw a beautiful bird fly overhead. Rounded round, it circled the distant blue sky. Star Force might be something I play eventually. I'm not necessarily in a rush to play it though. How? Where's the proof? The proof is that we're not straight. The proof is that we're not straight. Therefore, we know people who aren't straight. We're also autistic. You know that saying, takes one to know one? Well, how high it flew in the era when humans, not birds, reigned supreme. But I'm straight. No, you aren't. And yet the bird was completely uninterested in humanity's endless desire for expansion, our creation of even higher homes, or the smoke bellowing from the industry's chimneys. Shad has now devolved into arguing about everyone's sexuality. The sky extends further than the eye can see. It belongs to no one, not now, not then. The bird was a truly noble creature, flapping its wings powerfully across the wild, ancient sky. Okay, and I'm paid, so what? This is a very funny conversation. Oh great, look at this guy likes pans. until the sudden sound of cold iron. Let's just talk about sexuality of this bird's death. A wing is shot, its symmetry gone forever. A cruel and tragic, its body plummets downwards. Not knowing its fate, the bird frantically beats its wings to the very end. One moment soaring with eyes to the sky, the next crashing down to the dry, hardened earth. King, you can say fuck. You don't have to censor yourself. This was the dream I saw. No matter how much I thought about it, the details remained clouded. The bird was pansexual, and now it's in my skillet. What did the bird look like, for instance? Well, not anything. You can't say anything. Certain things will get you banned. But you can say mostly anything you want.
はい、今日の授業はここまで。試験範囲の総まとめなんかやっちゃいましたけど、これうちのクラスだけですから、よそのクラスには内密にお願いしますね。担任特権と思ってください。ほら、原告の平均点ぐらいは学年一番にしておくと、皆さんも鼻が高いと思いまして。
Wow, she's hot!
You weren't supposed to be able to do that, but we'll allow that. Not because I can't stop it. You weren't supposed to be able to make that sound effect happen. Remember, if this class gets the highest scores, you can bring it back to the other classes. Right. Trial and error, indeed. Mr. Yamashiro chuckled as he finished. Dizzy's in the kitchen. This is typically the kind of teacher responsible for Year 2 Class C, the master at relaxing his pupils.
先生、口元に本音出てる。鼻を高くしたいのは私たちじゃないですよね。
鼻っていうかメンツですよね。先生、里中先生に嫌味言われてばっかりだし。
つうかはっきり言えばいいんすよ。お前ら頭悪すぎだって。いやまあうちのクラス見事なまでに体育会系ばっかりだけどさ。
いえいえ、テストの点数だけが学生生活ではありませんから、僕から言うべきことは何も。先生方もそこまで目くじら立ててるわけじゃないので、別にクラス全員が赤点でも僕の人生には何ら関わりはないんですけどね。
That's not true. If you continuously have students that fail continuously, that's a sign that you're a bad teacher and you'll get fired.
しかし一方では一人厄介な御仁がおりまして、皆さんが選んだ全校生徒代表の方なんですが、これが恐ろしいのなんの。
Bro, no matter what happens, you know she's going to come back and bite you in the ass. Why would you say that out loud?
テストの点数が低いのは生徒ではなく教育する側が無能だからです。教育委員会への報告準備はいつでもできていますので、と日夜脅してくるんですよ。それでも生徒たちが治らないようなら、その時は直接私が監督しますとか、生徒としてどうなんですかね、あれ。
The warm atmosphere in the room suddenly fell below freezing. The students of Class C now knew who their true enemy was. Yeah, see, that is not something you could say.
あー、そっか。山城先生生徒会の顧問だったっけ。ナム。
さすがは応援団を立ち直らせた上傑。教師一人退職に追い込むなど造作もねえ。やっぱりな、会長絶対年サバ読んでるって。あの迫力同年代と思えねえし。ほら、うちの女子と比べると特にこうおっぱい的に。
先生、木の実だけでも A 組に引き取ってもらえませんか。そりゃ男子はみんな猿ですけど、こいつだけレベルの違う猿ですよ、絶対。
That is a really weird thing to say out loud to a full class of full students.
あれ、でも女子 A 組だけどあんまり成績良くねえよな。中の上ぐらいじゃなかったっけ。
そうだけど別にいいんじゃない。塾も行ってないし、生徒会仕切ってたまにバイトまでしてるんだから。あれで学年トップだったら逆に気持ち悪すぎ。
だよな。首位は副会長に任せとけばいいんだよ。
まあまあ皆さん、噂話はそのあたりで。地獄
You
耳という
literally
言葉
started
もあり
it.
ますから。じゃあ、それなりに復習をよろしく。あんまり点数が悪いと冬休みそのものがなくなりますからね。
I don't think that's how that works. And if it does how that works, if that is how that works, that's fucked up.
あ、それとしずきくん、ちょっといいですか
Mr. Yamashiro gathered his things and beckoned for Sojiro to join him in the hallway. There was no other students to be seen despite it being break time between classes. Voices were audible in the distance, but the hall itself felt strangely quiet and calm. Perhaps it was due to the sense of confinement created by the lack of windows. Usually students spent their breaks either in their classrooms or on the veranda.
何ですか、山城先生。
いえ、そう大した用事じゃないんですけどね。試験前にこんな話をするのもデリカシーがないんですが、気になったので。どうだろう、学校には慣れたかな。
What's the difference between an institution and a school? I don't know. Dizzy! Here, have a Dizzy explain the difference.
An institution, usually that's like mental health, and it's usually funded by the government or by the state. And a school is either a private school, which is usually the charter school, so the same thing applies, or a public school, which gets significantly less funding. Basically, it's a mental institution, or it's an asylum versus an actual school.
Why are you eating ice cream? You're sick.
Yeah.
Make that make sense.
I don't have to.
You kind of
make the rules.
You kind of do.
No.
Get the fuck out of here.
Where are my spoons? Where are my tiny spoons, bitch? There's only like 3 in the drawer.
You should not be using teaspoons to eat that in the first place.
It's a little cup. Where the fuck would I use a big spoon?
That's fair. I think they're in the dishwasher. Use the dishwasher. How don't you use the dishwasher?
I don't like the dishwasher.
Use the fucking dishwasher.
I don't like it.
The roommates stole your spoons because they're bitches. They can't steal our spoons. We don't live with them. Life update? Okay, quick life update. Things are going okay. We are coming to the point where we need to start paying the rent and all the other bills and whatnot. And that sucks. Lucky they are a they. Any other questions? Probably good. You're fine. It's not like you knew. But Dizzy is also in Natty's chat, so keep an eye out on that. Because you were there and you probably would know, and it's much funnier to have you come on stream than just have Google be there. Plus, I get to focus on the fact that you're not in stream. You can do both. You can do both. Don't give it the puppy dog eyes. I know what you've been doing. I know you're watching fucking Victorians in the modern age do cult shit. I don't know what your show's about.
There's actually a lady who fits that description, but she's British.
Yeah. because Dizzy's not listening to the stream. Yes, they are a fucking encyclopedia. Although I don't think that picked up on the mic for you guys to hear it. Modern Victorians doing cool shit sounds like a hell of a synopsis. I've decided to put Dizzy onto Kamen Rider Geats because while that is not the same thing, that is the same level of fuckery going on in Geats. They get the pronouns right. Technically, I'm also they, but I don't really care. I've been referred to as a she before, and that was before the whole entire pronoun thing. I don't give a fuck. I identify as me. All right. Are we good? Are we ready to go back to the game? Can I call you mine? Call me whatever they want. Just don't call me late for dinner. All right. Though his level of concern from her teacher startled him, Sojiro felt reassured. It was only natural. After having to deal with such difficult personalities lately, Mr. Yamashiro's trivial questions were refreshing.
はい。学校の作りや決まりなら自分なりに分かってきました。友達も増えましたし。
そっか。それは良かった。うちのクラスは口の悪い面々だけど、その分気を使わなくていいからね。
I hate doing that. Sojiro's eyes shone brightly in appreciation. In Olgo's words, Mr. Yamashiro was a brutish, forgettable, downright detestable man who did not even deserve the title of teacher, but Sojiro found him considerate in his own way.
アルバイトもほどほどにね。試験前だって言えば、大抵のところは休ませてくれるから、あまり無理はしないように。また、試験で困ったことがあったら、周りに相談しなさい。一人で悩んでいても時間の無駄だよ。ほら、学校っていうのは、話し相手にだけは困らないから。
With a wave of his hand, Mr. Yamashiro was gone. The pure-hearted Sojiro gave him a solemn nod as if he accepted the advice of his so-called forgettable teacher and went back into the classroom. And then...
女のことで相談だ?
Sojiro had not wasted a moment in putting Mr. Yamashiro's advice into practice.
そうらしい。難問にぶち当たっているんだ。
Sojiro couldn't know this, but there is such a thing as bad advice. You do not talk to a motherfucker who does not know how to talk to girls to talk about girls.
深く考えてみて気づいたんだ。
If you want to talk to girls about girls,
自分は発想が貧困らしい。
sorry, if you want to talk about what to do about girls, you ask a girl, especially in high school. Sojiro averted his eyes out of shame over his lack of insight. Or a gay person. A dude who likes men will always have you fucking set up. Shocked as he was, Kinomi grabbed Sojiro by the shoulders and pulled him over to the wall. Kinomi had nearly burst out laughing when Sojiro, with a straight face, had admitted his difficulty with girls, but he realized it was the first time Sojiro had ever turned to him for advice. Sojiro was always able to break down any task at his part-time jobs into bite-sized pieces, but he was clearly struggling with a different problem now. This is going to take some serious effort.
で、なんかやっちまったのか? Yo.
これからやるのかもしれない。木の実、例えばの話、マッドベアにハリセンボンみたいな女の子が入ってきたとする。その子は俺が嫌いで、マッドベアから出て行ってほしいようなんだけど、俺はマッドベアを辞めるわけにはいかない。
Sojiro explained that he couldn't just quit his part-time job at the restaurant. He needed the money. Kinomi grunted a few times to indicate that he was still following Sojiro's story. That's actually how you're supposed to talk in Japanese conversation. Usually in like more Western styles of conversation, in order to show that you're listening to somebody, you just kind of stare at them while they talk. But in Japanese styles of conversation, or let's say you're autistic, you make little grunts and nods and whatnot to show that you're listening to them actively.
つまりその女を追い出したいと。
逆だ。なんとか認めてもらいたい。隠していたけど、俺はその女の子が嫌いというわけじゃなくて。
Actually, Rocket Pal, you're doing it as a bit, but like exactly like that. Sojiro furrowed his brow. Kinomi could not help but laugh at his friend's lack of manly resolve at his answer. Girls were the one area where Hosuke's skills and experience were triple those of Sojiro's. No, they weren't. This man has never talked to a woman in his life.
なんだよ。要はナンパかよ。むしろ仲良くなりたいってわけ？
Sojiro wasn't sure how to respond. He nodded slowly without really understanding the implication of what Kinomi had said.
けど、どうすればいいのかわからない。そもそもどうやって同い年の女の子と仲良く話ができるんだ？
On top of the fact that you mean that as plain and platonic as possible, and you talk to the one person who wants to fuck anything that moves. That man would be sexist for a joke, and then why no woman wants to be with him? I'm saying.
クラスの女どもとは話してんじゃん。あれでいいんだっつの。俺は羨ましいっつの。持ち前の天然系で押してけばいいべ。山育ちってのは貴重なアイデンティティだと思うぜ。珍しいものは生かさないとさ。
そうかな。珍しいというのはあんまりいいことじゃない気がする。だいたいそもそも嫌われている場合はどうすればいいんだ？クラスのみんなは親切だけど、相手はハリセンボンだ。いや、この際ハリネズミでもいい。
No, hedgehogs are also very nice. I would know.
そういう場合はめげなきゃいいんだよ。相手が折れるのを待つって寸法だな。トゲだけに。
Sojiro's brow sunk deep. What? Sojiro's brow sunk deeper still.
この例え話はダメだ。
He needed more concrete material to work with.
バッカ、女なんてのは機嫌を取ってればいいんだよ。まずは女の趣味とか大事にしてるもんとか聞いて、そこをフォローすればいい。自分の都合より相手の都合だ。まずは外堀から攻めろってことだな。
This is weird advice. Honestly, his first thing to just be genuine with her was better advice. That's weird. Do not do that.
外堀、外回りか。
もち。その後はまあ結局はこれが一番効果的なんだけどな。袖の下ってやつ？プレゼントで釣れ。
That only works if their love language is fucking if their love language is gift giving or gift receiving. If it's not that, you're just bothering them.
その時の需要と供給さえ合えば嫌われてても受け取ってもらえる。受け取らせちまえばあとはそれが義理になるってもんだ。
Okay, don't. This is all bad advice. Kinomi then proclaimed with an odd sense of pride that his approach had resulted in only failure for him. See? He even admits that it's bad advice. Do not fucking do what that guy just said.
けど問題がある木の実。確かにご飯とかそういうのをおごってもらうと嬉しい。けど
そんな金はないってんだろ。わかってるわかってる。仕方ないね。そういうしずきくんのために一丁割のいいバイトを紹介してやろうじゃねえのよ。
Lucky, please back me up. In his head, he thinks he's right, but in reality, where he's used that technique, there's a 100% chance it's not going to go well for him. Not only is it not going to go well for him, I'm pretty sure most of the women in his class hate him. They slid from the side of the classroom deeper to one corner. What am I backing you up on? That guy's a dumbass and none of his advice is good for flirting? So in front of the lockers where no one ever stayed for long. It would be days before Sojiro realized the suggestion he was receiving was of the illegitimate kind, the kind he would not have shared with anyone. He's got a degree in dumbass. That night, dinner at the mansion was a feast of bread. Soft slices lay stacked in the center of the table, surrounded by various colored jams. In a bowl was salad, mainly lettuce, with a small plate of unevenly cut ham. Sojiro may have had no frame of reference for what an average family dinner should be, but you could tell that this was most certainly not normal. Oh no, people like different kinds of flirting. Almost all flirting will work on someone. Keyword almost. He is an outlier and should not have been counted. In truth, it was first-rate case of laziness. Damn, they put Nutella on bread and that's dinner.
アリス、新しいの買っておいてって言わなかった？
今日は一日部屋にこもっていたから。第一、チョコレートを食べるのはあなただけよ。自分のものは自分で調達をするべきね。
They cannot be eating college student dinner. Dog. For these two girls, however, the dinner seemed to be completely normal. They had a system of regularly taking turns being in charge of meals. Tonight was Alice's turn. Normally, she would spend as little time and effort as possible, only truly applying herself when there was something to celebrate. Of course, Sojiro was none the wiser to Alice's unique approach to food preparation. For him, it was a plain, lackluster meal. And when it came to dinner, not saying anything to each other was another staple of their meals. The sound of cutlery, the scraping of chairs, and the tick-tock of the clock were the only things to be heard in the sunroom. Sojiro himself had already I think what's funniest about that is that half of you guys heard the wrong thing and the other half heard the correct thing, and I'm not going to tell you which one was correct. Sojiro himself had already eaten. At this moment, he was watching the goings on from the drawing room.
Sojiro, 9時からアルバイトでしょ？行ってらっしゃい。私たちのことは気にしないでいいから。
ああ、じゃあ行ってくる。
Sojiro donned his coat with a goodbye nod. When Sojiro glanced again at the sunroom, he momentarily locked eyes with Alice, or so he imagined. She had been ignoring him all day, and not just refusing to talk to him, she had avoided him so much as to not look at him all day until this very moment. He could understand if he was annoying her as the outsider in the mansion, but he felt no animosity in her gaze just now.
今の様子を見てたのかな。
Sojiro looked nervously at his surroundings for a moment before heading to the foyer. After the dinner, they're going to say, okay, we're going to eat, or figure out if you're going to live or die. Yeah, maybe. Alice only let her gaze return to normal when she was completely sure he was gone.
めんどくさ。
Naoko was appalled by Alice's brazen display. So much so, her immaculate veneer of apathy crumbled.
何？献立に不満でもあるの？青子。
もちろんあるけど、いつものことだし慣れてるわよ。私が呆れてるのは、あんたの意地の悪さの方。徹底的に無視してるくせに、相手の反応を伺ってるなんてめめしくない？罠張って待ち受けるようなもんじゃない。
彼の反応なんて探ってないわ。そもそも興味がないもの。それと、今のは差別発言ね。めめしいという表現は女性軽視に過ぎるわ。
I wonder what she actually said.
今の場合なら、あなたは矛盾していると言ってちょうだい。
うわ、自覚ありときた。
Choosing not to rise to her roommate's jibe, Alice resumed eating. Naoko tore off pieces of bread and then ate them one by one, anger still visible on her face.
じゃあここからは青崎青子としてじゃなく共犯者としての質問ね。アリス的に彼を見逃していいと思える判断材料はない？ありえないけど実は彼も魔術師でしたなんてオチであったとしてもここに住まわせるのは容認できない？
その理由なら認めるわ。彼を許すのではなく、そんなことに気づかなかった私たちへのペナルティとして。そうね。今のは絶対にありえない話だけど、それと同じに絶対の結論もまたないわ。彼がここに住む選択を飲む場合すらあるかもしれない。気の迷いは私にだってあるのだし。
ええ、そういうことよ。今は私との義理とかプライドで冷静を保ってるあんただけど、あいつの努力次第で少しは。
それは諦めて。彼が何をしようと無駄だから。あなたも知っていると思うけど。
Alice had never been the type to let her guard down around others. The young witch despised humans, having recreated so many of their objects in fairy tales.
そんなのあんた個人のトラウマでしょ。自分の意固地さを魔女の血統云々で棚上げするのはそれこそめめしいわ。いいじゃない、嫌いなら嫌いではっきりしてれば。私が気に食わないのはね、あんたのどっちつかずの態度よ、アリス。
どっちつかずの態度？
そう、無視するなら徹底して無視してやれって言ってるの。ガチガチに守りを固めて、そのくせ城門だけ開けて、獲物が油断して入ってきたら串刺しにする気満々とか、相棒として見てられないわ。あいつにできることなんて閉ざされた門を開けることぐらいだっていうのに、その機会さえなくすのはどうなの？
ごめんなさい、青子。もう少し簡単に言って。
I think I understand what she's saying. She's basically saying you're trying to be nice to him and be a total asshole at the same time. Like she's saying that she's not being which way about one way or the other about things. So like if she doesn't like him and wants him to be wants to treat him like an intruder, then treat him wholeheartedly like an intruder. She's also trying to be like conscientious of him in like not a caring way, but like a roommate kind of way. Like a newborn puppy. Like you're trying to be cautious of them like a newborn puppy.
その例えはちょっと。
I don't know if I explained that any better, but basically she's not having any conviction in her actions. Alice seemed to be unable to grasp Oko's metaphor. Meanwhile, Oko had it up to here with her roommate's lack of self-awareness and was starting to lose her cool.
だから興味ないとか言っておきながら粉かけるなってこと。あんなにチラチラ盗み見たらあいつ変に勘違いしちゃうかもしれないでしょ。アリスはああ見えて本当は自分と仲直りしたがっているに違いない。じゃあ早速部屋に押しかけてみよう。
Okay, more accurately, she's saying if you don't care about him, then act like you don't care, and if you hate him, act like you hate him. Don't do both.
そういうことになるの？
なる。少なくとも私だったらいい加減イライラして話があるなら校舎裏まで来いって決着つけかねないレベル。この毒婦。
She she basically said seriously, but in a rude way. But it's funny that they translated that to bitch.
そうだったのね。気をつけるわ。別に彼と話をする気はないんだし、私も彼を見ていたというより、彼の手足を見ていたのだし。
手足ってなんで？
It ripped him off, obviously, like a Mortal Kombat finisher.
手足は手足よ。彼個人には思うところはないけど、あの夜の出来事はまだ記憶に新しいから。それが少しだけ気になって、つい視線で追っていたのね。
あの夜って遊園地のこと？なんかしたっけあいつ。
Alice's expression soured. She still felt the sting of her defeat.
飛んだでしょ、彼。レールの上から私のダンプティに向かって。
そんなこと言ってたわね。勢いでつい1メートルぐらいだから飛んじゃったとか。
Naoko had not actually seen it in person, luckily. All she knew was that the spell she had placed on Sojiro was part of the reason he survived the jump of death. Alice, on the other hand, had observed the whole scene from the clock tower. It only lasted an instant, but it had burned itself into her mind's eye. More than her precocious moon had fallen at Aoko's hands, and Flat Snark had come tumbling down.
でもそれがどうしたの？卵の敵討ちってわけ？
ダンプティは壊れるのが仕事だから、敵討ちも何もないわ。ただ、人間の体ってあんな風に動くんだなって。
As it goes. For someone with as little human interaction as Alice, Sojiro's leap must have appeared quite remarkable. Particularly because his legs were orders of magnitude less capable than those of an animal in the forest. And yet, even with such feeble legs, with those meek arms of his, he managed to fly through the open air like a bird. To her, it was akin to the feeling city folk get when they see a wild creature in its natural habitat.
気にしないで。機会があるならもう一度見たいと思っただけ。
Dizzy told me that sometimes boars come out, to which I said, if I see a boar, I'm leaving you there. Like, I'm sorry. That's just how it is.
別に彼に何を期待しているわけじゃないわ。
なるほど。アリスのプロイって大体が人型じゃないしね。単に物珍しさで見ていただけか。
Aoko sighed and released the tension from her shoulders. She was disappointed to discover that Alice's behavior stemmed from a simple curiosity like that of a child with a new toy. And Alice was in no position to take issue with her reaction. And how could she? She was not entirely sure what it was that she herself was feeling.
夕食、明日は私が作るから。試験前だってのに、こんなしょぼくれたもん食べさせられたら、一夜漬けする気合も湧かないわよ。
ご自由に。私も手が空いて助かるわ。
Night came and went in the mansion. For better or worse, the disturbances caused by the foreign invader had not yet caused the kettle to boil over. So do you think he's going to start making dinner for them? Because I think that's where that's going. The next morning at 6:30, as sunlight spread across the sky, Sojiro walked to school with Aoko in the chilly morning air.
いい？洋館にいるときは、極力一人にならないこと。
It was her intention to keep Sojiro safe until he left the mansion. Nonetheless,
眠い。6時から登校とか、あんたも働き者ね。
そうでもないよ。30分仕出しを手伝うだけだし。
his work ethic was a little too strong for a student entering finals.
それより青崎、無理してないか？別にこっちに付き合うことないんだぞ。
ご心配なく。生徒会室で仮眠取るから。約束だし、門までは一緒に行くわよ。
But internally, Oko was worried. What traps did her roommate have in store for him? She could not imagine Alice had planned anything to go down in the woods, but she wanted to be safer than sorry. The least she could do was accompany Sojiro to school. That much she was firmly committed to. I don't know what I'm going to use for the thumbnail, so if they could pick up something automatically, I might do that. Any traps that presented themselves could not be dealt with on the spot. Could then be dealt with on the spot. Well, not dealt with so much as destroyed, since that was Oko's forte, but that would be enough to keep him safe for the time being.
帰り道に関してはアリスもそこまで暇ではないと信じるしかないんだけど。
If Alice was willing to put all her energy into a new trap after the first had failed, then they were as good as dead anyway. But Oko would cross that road when she came to it. It all depended on how deep Alice's dislike of Sojiro really went. It would have been enough to make her abandon her pride as a witch, something she had protected fervently until now. If that were the case, Oko knew she would never be able to keep him safe. The moment 24/7 protection became necessary was the moment she had failed. Her character led her to focus on what she could do in the here and the now and ignore the rest. And this current plan of hers was the best attempt at doing right by everyone. They left behind the Kuonji estate, and the two remained together until the residential area at the bottom of the hill. Ryoko glanced casually at
とこ
Sojiro.
ろで何か考えてる？
None. Zero. Head empty. Bitch, no thoughts in here. Surprisingly, Sojiro saw through her harmless question and sensed the bigger issue. How was he going to win Alice over? In fact, he had been thinking about that very question. According to his friend, there were 3 basic approaches he could take. One was the roundabout approach. I'll be the roundabout, the words that make you down and out. I spend the day away.
人間ってのは自分が好きなものを大切にされるとコロッと気を許しちまう仲間意識ってやつだな。
They're gonna bury his ass on the hill? Oh yeah. In other words, instead of focusing on the person one wishes to win over, one should focus on their interests. It was a surprisingly mature opinion coming from Kinomi. Unfortunately, Sojiro had no idea what sort of things Alice liked. He also does not have the time. If they only have a week, that is not enough time for him to win her over. She seemed very fond of the mansion, but what could he do? Sorry, but what could he do? Clean it for her? He sensed that it would have the reverse effect. He had a distinct feeling that she would not want him touching what was precious to her. A second approach was to take the inner track.
でもやっぱり本人を落とすのが一番早い。俺たちに魅力がないのなら、魅力のある外付け装備に頼るのだ。
That would probably be also just as bad.
そう。プレゼントなんだよ、しずきくん。
That can work on some people, but like, you don't know anything about her, so you can't get her gifts. A quick and dirty strategy, the assassin strike, manipulates someone's feelings with the expensive gift. To Sojiro, this sounded like his best chance. The approach was easy for him to grasp, and he appreciated its simplicity. However, he had the same concerns as with the first approach. A step was missing, and without this step, the plan was bound to fail.
あとはまあ剣ってやつ。俺にはよくわかんないけどさ、やりすぎると悪い印象を持たれるとか殿下が言ってたな。
This is also not really bad advice.
私今落とされてるって意識させちゃダメなんだとよ。付き合った後であれ私落とされたと気づかせるのが上等なんだとか。
The song does not fit the mood. It fits the mood fine. It's not supposed to be serious. The problem is, that this actually is a serious conversation, but the mood itself is not supposed to be serious. And though Sojiro did not quite grasp the details, he understood the basic idea. Don't press your luck. He knew that much was a good advice. He would have to try extremely hard to get on Alice's good side, and he could tell it would be a long process to get there. Sojiro recalled the time he had wandered inside a fox's territory in the mountains. It always sounds like it's about to start off like a fucking proverb. Recall the man who wandered into the fox's territory in the mountains. Better get stepping, he's gonna be late for school! He had left some food on the ground for the fox, and then it never bothered him again. What he considered goodwill and kindness varies from person to person. But if there is enough goodwill from one side, regardless of whether that goodwill is reciprocated, the other side will eventually start to feel an obligation to do so. That was key.
大丈夫。考えてるよ。とりあえず自分にできることとか、したいことをしようと思う。安心してくれ。青崎に忠告されたことすら、きちんと守る方針だ。
Sojiro seemed ready to face things head on. His answer did little to reassure Aoko, however. She found herself more concerned about his safety than ever before.
学校にあるようなほうきが欲しい。
Who is this?
そうなんだ。できれば安く買えるところ。
しずきの家、アパートよね。ほうきなんてもの必要とは思えない。
Bitch, everyone, do you not clean your house, you fucking
いや、
dirty
ちょっと気に
bitch?
なるところがあって掃除がしたいんだ。ゴミ袋もあると助かる。
無駄な出費はできないって言ってたくせに。まあどうでもいいけど、うちのでよければ使う？貸してあ
Why
げ
does she
ましょう
also
か。
seem very angry? Like, what, is she just not a morning person? What's going on?
多分一日じゃ終わらないから自分で買うよ。元から欲しかったものだし、あると便利だよ。ほき
I always wanted my own broom. Sojiro was on his way home from his part-time job after school. It was 4 in the afternoon, 2 hours earlier than his part-time job would have normally ended. The Mad Bear's head chef had gotten in trouble with an accountant for making a student work the day before exams. Thus, Sojiro's boss had tearfully sent him home earlier. And that is when it happened. The interruption to his standard schedule must have been just the shock he needed. Normally, he would meet up with Aoko after she was done with student council affairs and go home with her. However, today, Sojiro was asking the other students who worked at the same place if they knew any shops in the area where he could buy a broom.
田舎者の趣味って理解不能ね。推強すぎ。
I don't think wanting a broom is that fucking strange. I think you're just a dirty bitch.
うちの近くにまっついラーメン屋あるでしょ。あそこの通りを終わりまで行けば起きたって金物店がある。一式揃えるなら西口のホームセンターより安く上がるわ。どうでもいいけど、私のチャリ使う？どうせ試験明けまで使わないし。
As grouchy as she seems, she's pretty nice. Sojiro's eyes lit up as if he had met his savior, but backing uphill to the mansion, let alone with a package to carry, was not a pretty thought.
いや、自転車には乗ってみたいけど、今回は遠慮するよ。じゃあ、また明日、学校。
Saying farewell to his co-workers, he headed to the hardware store. He needed a cheap and sturdy bamboo broom and a large dustpan to go with it. If possible, a pushcart and stick for a splint would have been nice too. As it happened, Sojiro wanted quite a few things. What does he need a pushcart for? I thought he was doing some racist rich shit and just gonna hand her a fucking broom. Like, oh, you're a witch, you like magic and shit, here's a broom. Alice returned to her work after waking from her nap. The Koenji estate had an annex that housed a library. The library was filled with books handed down to her from her mother, so it was Alice's territory such that even Aoko dared not enter. If the mansion was a witch's abode left behind by the times, the library was a fairy tale quarters lost to the ages. It was a natural sanctuary for the young witch who could command ploys to do her bidding. She relied on her memory to recall the location of each book on the many shelves. And then she saw it. Upon raising her head, she was met with the most unusual of sights. Her elegant eyebrows bristled in distaste. From that moment on, she failed to accomplish anything she had planned for the day. She was instead forced to stare at the strange sight outside her window, eyebrows fixed in that position until the sun set. Ah, well. Moving into the grand mansion on the hill had not brought any major changes to Sojiro's day-to-day schedule. He woke up, went to his part-time job, ate breakfast, and went to school. Classes came and went, still strange and new, broken up by rare and brief moments of rest until the school day ended. He left school, went to his part-time job, slept, woke up, and studied for exams. A modest life for a modest young man, continuing every day in the same fashion despite his best efforts to change his fortune. But nothing ever really changes. Whether Oko was by his side in the mansion, as was frequently the case, or whether Alice was making him drink some potion she prepared before going to bed. The former was an attempt by Oko to make him feel better. The latter was some attempt to keep him safe, even if he did not fully appreciate it. Then, one day, a day like any other, while Sojiro was pouring himself some tea as he worried over the lack of change in his life, his relationship with Alice was the same as ever, but there was one major change this morning. But there was one major change this morning. He was drinking black tea instead of green. Though there were sorts of different types of tea to be found in the kitchen, a newcomer to the world of tea like Sojiro could not tell one of them from the next. That is a weird statement because green tea and black tea taste very different, even if you don't know the difference between teas. Naturally, his tea-making skills were limited to tea bags, one of which he placed in his cup before returning to the dining table. Alice and Oko already seated. The two were eating in silence. In this household, it was everyone for themselves when it came to breakfast. The diplomatic description of breakfast would be simple. The more accurate description would be 2 slices of a stale bread prepared in seconds. Ah yes, the broke college student way. Uncle exchanged a word or two with Alice, took a sip of tea, and stood up from her seat. Since it was winter break for the high schooler, Alice, she returned to her room after eating as she normally did, while Oko headed to the front door, shoes in hand, ready for school. After hurriedly clearing the table, Sojiro rushed out of the door after Oko. Together they walked down the long hill in the direction of school. They had spent 3 days following this very simple routine.
ところで、あれから動きはあった?
School had ended and evening had arrived. Buttered bread roll in hand, Alice replied with a simple, silent shake of her head.
そう。ならあっちも次の手を考えているんでしょうね。魔術師本体の居場所は見当ついてる?
Her response was exactly the same. Without showing the slightest sign of dejection, she continued to chew the roll and took a stab at her salad.
そう。私も試験が終わったら手伝うから、それまで悪いけど一人でやってて。今日からあのバカを一夜漬けにしなくちゃいけないんで、余裕ないの。
Alice's face grew dour as if she had something to get off her chest.
問題ないでしょ? アリスはもう休みに入ってるんだから、一日全部使えるじゃない。
Alice was indeed on vacation and can spend all day every day on her work as a mage. Yet she had spent the past few days holed up in the library instead. She was hardly devoting herself to dealing with the challenger, as Oko put it.
アリス? 聞いてる?
わかってる。 今夜からそっちもやるから。
Sighing, she stood up. What was bothering Alice, and what was bothering Alice, and what was she about to say? What had she been doing only 2 hours earlier? The young witch took her leave from the breakfast table without offering a single clue. Misaki High was a private school, and as such its winter break started earlier than public schools. The end of term ceremony in mid-December followed by a brief respite before the next term began. Of course, that was if and only if they overcame the classic obstacle lying between them, an extended break from school, final exams. The radio continued its broadcast late into the night. Reading is hard. A thermos of hot tea eliminated the need to venture down to the kitchen. An electric blanket kept away the winter cold, and a crab-shaped pastry staved off any dinnertime hunger. These were the lengths Aoko had gone to. She needed to ensure that every aspect of her surroundings helped her pull a successful all-nighter.
期末試験1日目、ご苦労様。それで、生まれ変わる覚悟はできた？
Sojiro nodded earnestly. Upon returning from work, he encountered not the mage he expected, but the Demon Student Council President Aozaki. Half a day earlier. The first day of exams were over, and Sojiro was about to head back to the mansion where he hoped to put his plan into practice when...
今夜、私の部屋で監禁ね。あ、夕方からのアルバイトは当然キャンセル。ちょっと本気であの点数はありえないから。
A cold blue grin greeted him in the hallway. Clenched in her fist was Sojiro's exam paper. Mr. Yamashiro had no doubt said,
転校してきたばかりだし、しょうがないよね。
but she had snatched the exam out of the teacher's hands the minute he tried to show her. That was how Sojiro had ended up in Aoko's room instead of the room in the attic to which he was accustomed. Though her situation was far from normal, at the end of the day she was an adolescent girl like any other. Naturally, she felt uncomfortable letting a boy her own age into her room. However, his grades were truly something that called for desperate measures. That explained why her mood was even worse than normal today, and the vein on her forehead was pulsing visibly with anger.
先に自分の復習済ませる。あんたはそのテーブル使ってて。
Oko turned her back to him and sat down at her favorite desk. Sojiro was left standing before a cheap-looking glass table.
なんかいろいろと慣れないな。なあ、青崎、この青いのなんだ？
Please tell me he's not talking about the guitar. Restless, Sojiro found his eyes drawn to the guitar propped in the corner.
なんか薄いし青いしとんがってるし、きっと青崎のことだし、もしかしなくても武器か。
Bruh.
楽器よそれ。エレキはともかく、アコギは音楽室で似たようなのあったでしょ？あとこれ以上青々言ったら、そのとんがってるので殴るからね。
Sojiro plopped himself down onto a cushion, struggling to suppress the desire to retort that it was a weapon after all.
ちょっとは落ち着きなさいよ。いつもは耳の遠い大型犬みたいに鈍感なくせに。何か気になるものでもあるの？
In fact, it was Aoko who was oblivious for once. For his part, Sojiro could not figure out why he felt so restless either. Suffice it to say, they were both pretty clueless in this moment.
あ、もしかして内装？この部屋の家具のグレードが今とは違うから不思議がってるのね。
This is, interesting.
ここ。ベッド以外は私の家から持ち込んだものなの。引っ越してから2年経つけど、まだ屋敷には馴染んでないでしょ。
Though she misunderstood the real reason for Sojiro's nervousness, Aoko seemed satisfied that she had resolved Sojiro's anxiety for the time being and returned to her studies. She flipped through her notes and textbooks as if fast-forwarding a tape. There was no opening for an outsider like him to intrude in her high-speed study session. Repelled by her intensity, He retreated to his table, and he was at least sensitive enough to pick up on her desire to be left alone. It was a testament to Sojiro that having his needs utterly ignored was now second nature to the extent that he could now happily go about his business in solitude. Two hours passed. Then, as the clock neared 11, Aoko's speed and concentration began to slip. Speed and concentration. Damn a beta at that. Listen, it's not his fault. He grew up in the mountains with literally nobody around. He can't help it. Seeing his window of opportunity, Sojiro seized the moment to strike up a conversation.
青崎、ちょっといいかな。
ん？何？
She spoke hesitantly, not bothering to turn to face him. She continued to flip the pages of her textbook, albeit at a slower speed than before.
この3日間、青崎たちの夕食事情を見てきたけど、君たちの食事はいつもああなのか？
そうだけど、おかしい？
そう言われると困るな。ただ学校じゃみんな楽しそうだった。誰かと食事をとるってことはああいう風になることだって思ってた。だからもしかすると。
もしかしないわよ。別にあんたのせいでアリスと話さないわけじゃないわ。私たちはいつもああだから。
Aoko spoke calmly with her back still turned, seemingly unaware of what he was getting at.
張り詰めた食卓だな。青崎とアリスは仲がいいと思ってたのに。
She neither confirmed? She neither confirmed nor denied his statement. She was, however, surprised by the disappointed tone in which he had made it.
張り詰めた食卓っていうのは合ってるわね。アリスが何回あんたの飲み物にメスカリンを
Do
入
you
れ
guys
てたか
eat at a
も
dinner
う覚えて
table
な
or
い
do you
し、
guys eat
昨日なんか堂々とサラダの中に7かまどなんか混ざって
like
る
in
し。
your rooms or on your own? Also, what the fuck is mescaline? Mescaline. What the fuck is Rowan?
ほんと。あの子何考えてるんだろう。
A bitter smile spread across her face in reminiscence. The pages of her textbook continued to turn.
メスカリン？
サボテンから取れるアルカロイドよ。
What
ア
the
リスが
fuck?
使う以上、ただの幻覚剤じゃないでしょうけどね。と、私はこんなもんでいっか。
What the fuck? We're just gonna casually talk about the fact that she tried to drug him twice? With that, she slammed shut her fourth textbook of the night. After having scarcely changed position the whole night, she finally turned in her chair to face him. I was terrible at studying as a kid.
さあ、今度はあんたを仕込まなくちゃね。今日の4科目の答案、実に宗十郎らしい出来栄えでそっと押しそうになったわ。私。
Her tone was light, but her gaze was heavy as she stared at Sojiro, seated cross-legged on the floor.
原告、地理、数学、電子工学。
You have an electronics class?
あの調子であと2日続けたら、冬休みが消えるのは当然でしょうね。そうなると困るのは私なのよ、実際。
いや俺も困るぞ。休みなのに学校に行くのはなんか気が乗らない。
Sojiro calmly corrected her.
そりゃあ私のセリフだ。あんたが学校に行くってことは必然こっちまでとばっちりが来るっての。
All she could think about, as much as she tried not to, was Mr. Yamashiro and his annoying grin.
それ以前に私の目が黒いうちはオール赤なんてやつは許さない。本来なら少年から叩き直すところだけど、あんたはいろいろ事情があるからとりあえず点数だけで勘弁してあげる。私もテストは一夜漬けで片付ける方だから、あんた一人仕込むのにそう時間はかからないだろうし。
So here's your fun fact for the day. This is a trope in anime, so we're not going to take this too seriously, but pulling an all-nighter in actual studies will probably make your test scores worse. You need the rest. If you're going to pull an all-nighter, do it like a couple of days before the test, all right? Doing an all-nighter before the test will make you perform worse. Sojiro's expression openly soured in response to her declaration. It was obvious he did not think he needed her meddling in his studies.
あんたね、 苦労するのは私とあなたどっちだと思う？
Sojiro got the feeling that it would be him, but he nodded slowly nonetheless. Then again, it would probably take more effort on her part than his, and in any case, he knew there was no way to talk her out of it.
この度はご迷惑をおかけします。
Sojiro summarily bowed his head to show gratitude and willingness to work.
よろしい。安心なさい。私だって鬼じゃないから。別に平均点狙うってわけでもなし。予定通りこなしていけば3時には眠れるわよ。
She nodded with satisfaction, pleased by his studious attitude. He had plenty of obstacles ahead of him, but that sense of humility might be enough to see him through.
って何仏心出してるんだ私。いい？しずきくん。この後頼られちゃたまんないから釘刺しておくけど、私がマンツーマンで誰かを仕込むなんてことめったにないから。これはあくまで異例中の異例だって覚えておいてね。
She spoke more to convince herself than him, but his expression still darkened. It made one want to hang a sign around his neck that read, "Please take me home," like an abandoned pet. Oko chided herself for being so soft. For some reason, in that moment, she recalled that it had been raining the day they met each other. Time passed like the falling grains of an hourglass.
結局
Oko squinted as light poured through the window, and she downed another cup of tea. She had lost count of exactly how many she had drank long ago.
一晩かかったね、青崎。
Sojiro picked up on what she left unspoken. Oko had used up all her prep, and staying up all night, but also shouting at him. He looked pale and uncomfortable, just as he had all night long.
甘く見てたわ、あんたのことを。
だから褒めても何も出ないって。
ある意味褒めるに値するかもね。
She was at the end of her rope, but she could not help the bit of pride that swelled up in her. He lacked even the most basic comprehension. His lack of even the most basic comprehension was shocking, even taking into account his upbringing in the wilderness. His ability was that of a middle school student, and that was being generous. Preparing him for exams by teaching him new concepts and ideas was a waste of time. Rote memorization was his only hope for passing. Everything he memorized could collapse like a house of cards afterwards for all she cared, so long as he remembered for his exams. Assuming he had the capacity to be a good student in the first place, had been her mistake. It took all night to cover the content for just 4 exams, and she still did not feel confident he could apply what he so earnestly tried to memorize.
でもね、真面目なのはいいことだけど、あんた暗記するのに時間かかりすぎ。
そこは多めに見てほしい。今まで頭より体で覚えることのが多かったんだ。
Uncle let an exasperated sigh. Naturally, physical prowess mattered more in the mountain life than intellectual kind, but still.
まあいいわ。これで山城からあんたの成績について相談されることもないでしょうし。紅茶、もう一杯入れてくれる
Sojiro stood up and obeyed, as Oko stressed her aching back. She had apparently bought the tea bags in bulk, so there was still plenty to use.
まったく無駄遣いだな、青崎は。
He spoke under his breath so she wouldn't hear. It made him somehow happy to see her so tired and unfocused after the grueling all-night lesson she had given him. It did not cross his mind that the excess tea bags, far from being an indulgent purchase, were purchased intentionally to sustain them through the night. A relaxed expression came across Oko's face as she watched him, naive and peaceful as could be.
悪くないけど、せめてリーフティーで入れられるように仕込まなくちゃダメかな。
Seeming to have overheard her not so inner monologue, Sojiro made to face her.
やっぱり味は違うのか？
違う、もう全然。
I agree.
正直私はどうでもいいんだけど、アリスはね、かなりお茶にはうるさいよ。
As expected.
そうだ、宗十郎、 アリスとうまくいってる？
Alko cheerfully slumped over the table, now covered with textbooks and scribbled notes. Sojiro watched her with a hint of resentment in his eyes.
彼女と会えるのは食事の時だけで、食事と言ったらあれだろう。どうやって仲良くなれって言うんだ。
そう？私は十分脈ありだと思ったけど。そっちはアリスを怖がってないし、アリスはそっちを追い出す理由を見つけようと躍起になってるし。いい条件よ、これって。
全然わからないな。あの子とこっちの関係は遊園地前の青崎と俺の関係と同じじゃないか。一体どこがいい条件なんだ？
とりあえず反目し合ってはいないでしょ。一方通行の関係だけど、それはそれ。アリスにしちゃ上出来っていうか、理由を探している時点で可能性ありってね。あの子は反感に応えることが癖になっちゃってるから、大抵相手を自滅させちゃうのよ。
Her ominous words only confused Sojiro further.
知ってしまえば単純な話なんだけどね、あの子の場合。ただ、
Whether or not he could put it into practice was another story altogether.
難しいよ、青崎は。
He carried their teacups back to the table as she spoke. Alko picked up hers and took a sip as if to dispel her exhaustion.
でも、確かに君の言う通りだ。俺はまだあの子の顔しか知らない。クオンジ・アリスという名前すら定かじゃないのは問題があるね。
He followed Alko's lead and took a sip out of his own. His cup contained not tea but plain hot water. What the fuck?
あの子のこと教えてほしい？
Alko scrutinized him carefully as she sat. Most boys would have been captivated by her gaze in that moment.
いや、そういうことは本人に聞いてあげるべきだと思う。
But he ignored her and stared straight ahead as if speaking directly to Alice herself.
そうね。ほんと、あんたってアリス好みの対応をするわ。ねえ、前から気になってたけど、客室でアリスに何を言ったの？いくら私との約束とはいえ、あの子が部外者を半日も放置するなんてありえないのよ。
He thought back to that moment. He could recall only 2 or 3 words he had exchanged with Alice after awakening in the guest room. He did not recall the conversation being anything special, but he could not bring himself to casually share it with Aoko now. After all,
ねえ、どんなセリフであの子の気を変えたの？
Aoko eagerly pressed him for answers. Sojiro frowned, unsure of what to say. He did not know what the interaction had been like for Alice, but for him it had felt special, sacred almost. The question was, why and for whom was he so concerned?
ほら、白状しなさいってば。隠し事なんて似合わないわよ。
Her disconcerting smile moved even closer. Sojiro did not look like he was able to stay silent much longer. He would eventually come to realize Oko Aozaki had a sometimes troubling propensity to gossip.
まあ、あの子と何を話したかは言わないけど、今の青崎に比べれば花もロマンもなかったのだけは確かかな。さっきまでは青崎が鬼みたいだったから、いいもんだなって気がつかなかった。
He stared directly into her eyes as he spoke. Aoko nearly leapt out of her seat in panic. Now that he pointed it out, she realized their bodies were practically touching.
仕方ないでしょ。この方が効率良かったんだから。あんた、横にいないとすぐ間違えるし。
Aoko stood up as she lashed back at him.
そうだね。なんか昔みたいで久しぶりに集中できた。これが異例中の異例っていうのが本当に残念だ。
余裕あるじゃない。その分じゃ今日のテストだけじゃなく、アリスとの話し合いもうまくいきそうね、宗十郎。
ああ、それはもちろん。
This is cute. His cool response caught her off guard, and for a moment she was at a loss for words. She meant it sarcastically, and yet he responded with a warm smile.
方針変更だ。まずは近くで話しかけてみるよ。嫌なことはいずれ終わるって分かったから。
Aoko remained in a state of silent shock as he spoke and rose to his feet. She could not help but feel a reluctant respect for what seemed to be his newfound confidence and competence.
とりあえず今日は一人で帰ってアリスと話してみる。青崎は放課後生徒会だろ？
He was right. It was the last meeting before winter break. Normally, he would have waited until the meeting ended or else gone straight to his part-time job. This was part of Oko's plan to make sure he and Alice were never alone in the mansion together.
待った。まさかあんた、一人でアリスとやり合うつもりなの？
別にやり合うつもりはないぞ。し合っても勝てないだろう、アリスには。
His reply made complete sense, which floored her.
でも、青崎がいたら話が複雑になるのは目に見えてるんだ。そんなわけで、今日はゆっくり飛び丸の相手でもしててくれ。
本気？
He felt like he was being tested, but nodded nonchalantly nonetheless. Knowing how grave the situation really was, Aoko was not sure how to respond to his apparent lack of concern. The morning light coming through the window marked a stark contrast between the two. Which stood bathed in light? Which lurked in darkness? That went without saying. The silence lasted for only a brief moment. Staring at him gravely, she said.
そう。なら止めはしないわ。
That was all she had. Her dry tone hid the significance of their poignant silence, not revealing the slightest sign of discord.
なんか怒ってないか、青崎。
別に。それで何か考えはあるの？下手な考えは通じないわよ、あの子には。
Sojiro furrowed his brow in deep thought. He knew it would be hard to get close to her through talk alone. In fact, it felt nearly impossible.
言葉で落ちないやつは
Hinomi had been the voice of wisdom and folly for him countless times in the past. Incidentally, Kinomi had been referring to Owoko at the time he shared that pearl of wisdom. But Sojiro had the distinct impression that trying to buy Ozaki's kindness with gifts would not end well.
だいたいアリスの趣味もわからないじゃないか。考えてみると、今の自分と彼女はまるで接点がない。
Sojiro crossed his arms at a loss.
いつものことだけど、何も考えてなかったわけね。
うん。でもまあ、あれこれ考えなくてもいいと思う。アリスにはあれこれ説明するとか、分かってもらおうとか、そういうんじゃなくて、なんていうか。
What an incredibly lucid thought. He pondered intently as he tried to put his vague thoughts into something concrete, but he did not spend much time in thought. With a nod, he concluded.
要は、俺が彼女を好きかどうかってことじゃないか?
He articulated that which is often so hard to say with surprising clarity and calm. It was certainly a prerequisite for the task he hoped to achieve. He had no hope of making her appreciate him with words, or with acts of giving with the expectation of reciprocation. He simply wished to get to know her better because he liked her. That was his honest, uncontrived intention, and it reflected the purity of his heart. Did I not say that like an hour ago? He just needs to be genuine. But whether that was his best interest or not was another story altogether. Calculation and compromise, selfishness and conflict. Purity, such as has often irritated people who believed that morals went against human nature. Or rather, people who were inevitably forced to believe it. Aoko silently walked away without responding to what Sojiro said. Her long hair swung from side to side as she passed him.
Ozaki?
Noting her strangely cold manner, he called out to her. However, she was already opening the door to leave.
下でシャワー浴びてくるから、あなたは自分の部屋に戻ってて。
Her words lacked any expressive inflection. In his confusion, all Sojiro could do was
いいけ
nod.
ど、やっぱり怒ってないか、青崎。
Emotion returned to her face as he spoke. Yet it was not the typical irritated look to which he had grown so accustomed.
そうね。あんた流に言えば、多分私は怒ってる。何に対してのものかは、あんまり言いたくないけど。
Or Sojiro did not even realize that he himself was the reason. She looked at him, and for an instant he witnessed an emotion on her face of which he had never seen the likes of before.
じゃあね。これが最後になるかもしれないから、お別れぐらいは言っておくわ。あなたはアリスを甘く見すぎてる。でも、それが同時にあんたの強みなのよね。私たちには毒にしかならないけれど。
The door slammed loudly shut. The door slammed loudly shut behind her. What? The door slammed loudly shut behind her. The door slammed. You ever read a sentence and it just doesn't sound correct? The door slammed loudly shut behind her. Feels like there should be a comma there. Her steps were audible as she walked away on the other side of the wall. The corridor must have been nearly freezing without any central heating, but Oko seemed perfectly comfortable.
なんで私から出ていくんだ。順番が逆。普通先に出てくのはそっちじゃない。
Naoko promptly kicked Sojiro out of her room. Once again, the wooden door closed with a slam. The corridor was not as cold as he had expected. Not quite as bad as a freezer, at least. The second day of exams ended and Sojiro was on his way back to the mansion. The road grew steeper and the woods thicker as he made his way up the familiar slope. People in town called it not a hill but a mountain, simply because it took over 20 minutes to climb. This did not sit well with Sojiro, for whom a mountain was something that could not be overcome so easily. The road was paved for one thing, and the canopy overhead let in plenty of sunlight to guide the way. None of the inclines were especially steep, and no animals lurked in the underbrush. There was no chance of losing his way, no reason to worry about getting lost. Sojiro quietly reprimanded himself for getting so wrapped up in his own little world. In the past few weeks since moving here, he had been constantly comparing the town with his former mountain home. Normally, he would not get upset over it, but in recent days, since meeting Aoko, as it happened, he had become rather hung up on the differences. The reason for this eluded him, but he knew that Aoko was a force that could not be stopped. This naturally made him want to quicken his own pace. The mansion where they both lived was the antipathy of her lively personality. Where are the mountain peaks, bro? This is bullshit. I wanted to see mountain peaks. Everything is flat. It stood out like a sore thumb, even in a town like Misaki. Some people said it was haunted. There were no ghosts per se, but it was inhabited by magicians, so their claims were closer to the truth than they could have possibly known.
そういえば、幽霊と魔法使いっていうのはどっちが常識外れなんだろう。
Definitely ghosts. Lost in contemplation as he was, the boy failed to notice how his own lack of familiarity with the city life played into the equation. In any case, none of his pondering changed what needed to be done. Tomorrow was the last day of exams. That meant he only had a little longer until Aoko stopped taking responsibility for his safety. If possible, today was going to be the day when the mansion's owner accepted his continued residence there. Sojiro slipped between the trees encircling the mansion and walked down the naturally tree-lined avenue that led him to the front door. Sate.
Yoshi.
Taking a deep breath, he stepped across the threshold. The drawing room was where he expected to find Alice. However, he found himself face to face with the most unexpected scene. A few steps in, he arrived at a large foyer extending from the mansion's entrance. But one thing was clearly out of place. The foyer of the mansion was like a hall in a medieval castle. It was illuminated by the cold winter sun casting down through the skylight, unaided by artificial light. The Holy shit, they were right. What was right? The wooden tiles smelled of the outdoors. And there was Alice dressed in all black, huddled against the column so enormous it resembled a sharply cornered tree trunk. The mansion was quite literally supporting her frail body. Like a mother's lullaby, or a gently rocking cradle. The heavy atmosphere within this old building suppressed even the slightest stir, almost as if warding away any disturbance to her slumber. She's not dead, calm down. She's just sleeping. There she slept in the shadow of home. Hidden away from outsiders, her sleeping figure was enough to mesmerize anyone who laid eyes upon her. Sojiro instinctively looked up at the ceiling out of sheer awkwardness. He wanted to surprise her, but not in this way. Her slender frame lay. Use a different word. There were so many I think we did this last time. I'm gonna do it again. Fuck it. Let's see. Slim, lean, slight, svelte. That's a fun one. Svelte, willowy, graceful. Meager, scant, tenuous. Lithe, wiry, trim. We have so many different words. Use a different word other than fucking slender. Jesus Christ. The scene was as beautiful as a painting, yet hard on his heart at the same time. Her slumber seemed breathless. She was too still, with not even a hint of movement. And yet, slumped against the frigid column under the cold winter sky, happiness appeared to be her blanket. A passerby would not be blamed for thinking she was the most peaceful state of eternal slumber, death. Sojiro spoke to himself as he gazed idly upon her. Bringing her a blanket or something warm did not so much as cross the boy's mind. Instead, odd as it sounds, the first thing he thought to do was to go prepare some tea. Bitch, wake up, you're scaring me. He made sure to be as quiet as possible as he opened the drawing room door. On the table, waiting for him, were 3 pills. They were the medicine Elko required him to take every day when he arrived home. Gulping down the vaguely sweet pills and continuing on to the kitchen, he'd selected a box of tea from among the many in the cabinet and brewed enough for 2 people. Wake the fuck up, Samurai. You're scaring me. Good morning, Rider! Rakabao, have you been watching Kamen Rider Zets? If you haven't, you should. Alice was still asleep when he returned to the foyer. Careful not to make any noise, he crouched close to the ground. He was startled by how cold the floor felt through his pants. He thought it would be warmer here by the fireplace, but then again he recalled how Oko had referred to it as a useless hole in the wall. What was likely the case was that neither she nor Alice knew how to use it properly. After taking the teacups from the tray and placing it one in front of each of them, Sojiro carefully pulled his textbook of classical literature from his satchel. He could still see her angry face from this morning. The reason for her anger was still as much a mystery as the unusual look he saw briefly come across her face. In any case, one thing was certain, he needed to start studying for tomorrow. Thanks to Oko's instructions, today's exams went well enough, but tomorrow's would be even more formidable challenge. After how angry she was this morning, he could not expect her to help him again tonight. He complained under his breath as he cracked open his textbook. Apparently, he intended to spend his time in this fashion until Alice finally awoke. The sound of pages turning was only audible noise in the grand hall. There was no ticking of clocks or rustling of leaves to disturb her sleep. After a few hours, Sojiro quietly rose to his feet. The light that had filled the foyer was beginning to turn from white to red.
そろそろバイトの時間か。
He glanced again at Alice as he stretched his stiff back. She slept in perfect stillness, just as she had this entire time. That cannot be comfortable. Sojiro arched his brow in speculation. He had no idea what her normal sleeping schedule was like, so he had no idea as to whether he should wake her.
青崎も帰ってくるだろうし、いらぬ世話かな。
As if reaching the end of a long train of thought, Sojiro gave a quick nod of his head and took his leave of the mansion. Today's work was a shift at the Chinese restaurant in Misaki's district, the Mad Bear. You still don't know what the fuck was up with that woman that, like, scared the shit out of him. The uniforms had been made by someone with an obvious preference for garish colors. The orange apron was emblazoned with a cartoonish polar bear slashing a walk in two with its powerful claws. The design resembled warning signs about wild animals seen in the mountains and stood out in Misaki for its one-of-a-kind originality. This was the Chinese restaurant, the Mad Bear. Aside from the name and logo, the restaurant was the type of cheap hole-in-the-wall dive that could be found anywhere. In fact, competition from the ever-increasing number of chain restaurants, though it had managed to last longer than other dining spots, have received rave reviews on a regular basis. She just wanted to fuck with him? I mean, that could very well be the case. The Mad Bear prioritized the personal touch, focusing on its local clientele. Why is it spaced out like that? And thus made it a point to offer home delivery. It had earned the affectionate moniker QKS, the killer stop. Making these deliveries was Sojiro's responsibility for the time being. Places in Misaki within cycling distance fell under his domain. Anything beyond that was handled by a more experienced staff member on the legendary 50cc King Salmon motorbike. But anyway. When delivery workers were not on deliveries, they spent their shift bussing tables or washing dishes. The dinner rush was yet to come, and Sojiro and his fellow delivery boys were shooting the breeze while washing dishes in the back.
聞いてるか、しずき。聞いてるよ、木の実。
Two were elbow deep in a giant sink as they were enthusiastically scrubbing. At least that was what they pretended to do while they gossiped.
和食のケニアだけじゃねえんだってよ。三崎町の大帝都にもメシアンにもその手の注文があったらしいぜ。そんなに肉が欲しいなら下市に行けばいいのにな。なんだって生肉だの大物の鮭丸ごとだのを出前させやがるのか。
That is a really weird thing to do.
どうよ。こう露骨にヤバそうな話じゃね？ワニとかアザラシでも飼ってるんじゃねえかな、そいつ。
他に比べてみると確かに珍しい話だと思う。
This nigga doesn't know what an alligator is.
ワニってなんだ？
ワニはワニだろう。だっせ、実物見たことないのかよ。まあ俺もねえけどな。今度ガクガク動物ランドのアフリカ特集ビデオを貸してやるから見とけよ。
Aren't crocodiles in Africa? Maybe alligators are there too. I don't fucking know. This was a familiar pattern of conversation between the two, especially now Kinomi was used to Sojiro's lack of general knowledge. The banter was interrupted by the delivery phone. The manager snapped up the receiver and quickly jotted down the order and address. Once he hung up, everyone in the kitchen did their best to avoid making eye contact with him. Nobody wanted to go rushing out for a delivery on such a cold day.
しずきくん、ちょっと遠いけど配達をお願い。
The manager singled Sojiro out for the task, seemingly unfazed by his staff's laziness.
はい、これ届けるもののリスト。異例だからあまり他のバイトには他言しないようにね。
The The manager tore the sheet with the order and address written on it from his memo pad. Sojiro took one look at it before a grimace quietly spread across his face. What? Even Sojiro grimaced at it?
Manager?
なんだい
The manager stared right back at him as if he could tell what he was going wanted to
君
say.
の疑問はもっともだしかしな長いことこの商売をやっていると時にはこんなバカな話が転がってくることもあるじゃ冷蔵庫から品物持ってくるから
Sojiro stared in admiration as the manager, dressed in black, marched out of the kitchen in his all-business way. Nowhere was free from the odd. Nowhere was free from the odd occurrence now and then. We're gonna be ending soon anyway, because we're reaching on the 3-hour mark. I can only read for so fucking long. Plus, I have some Kamen Rider to watch.
遅い。
It was after 10 at night. Sojiro had taken a small detour on his way back home from work, and now faced an outraged Aoko, as expected. Seeing her so visibly irritated made him feel a rush of relief. He did not know why she was angry, but he could tell that it was a different type of anger than what he saw earlier that morning.
遅いって、まだ10時になったばかりだろう。どうしたんだ、青崎。
He set down the cardboard box he had been carrying in his arms and glanced toward the fireplace. The sleeping girl was there no more.
違うわ。もう10時になったの間違いでしょ。あんたってほんと自分がどんな状態にあるか分かってないのね。いいから今に来て。
He walked briskly to the other room without pausing, leaving Sojiro standing in confusion, head tilted to one side. He proceeded to pick up his box back up and follow after her eagerly. He removed his coat and hung it up on a hanger as he entered the living room. Apparently today was one of those days where Alice kept herself locked away in her room. On the table were the familiar pills.
説明しなかった私も悪いけど、あなたも帰ってくる時間は守ってよね。こっちはそのつもりで作ってるんだから。
Malko handed him the pills and a glass of water with an expectant look on her face.
薬なら出かける前に飲んだけど、体の調子だって悪くないし、そんなに慌てることか？
は？なんだって私たちがあんたの健康を気にかけなくちゃいけないのよ。勘違いしてるようだけど、あんたが帰ってくるたびに飲んでるのって平たく言えば毒よ。即効性じゃないから効き目は半日すると出てくるんだけど、その前に新しい毒薬を飲んでおかないと古い毒が体に回ってばったりいくって寸法ね。
So they are trying to they're literally killing him.
アリスのやつ、これぐらいしないと信用できないって言い張ったのよ。ほら、分かったらさっさと飲む。ま、私もこれ面倒だと思うし。近いうちもっと形のある方法を考えてみるから、それまでこの方法で我慢して。
言ってることは支離滅裂だが、とにかく今まで良くないものを飲んでたんだな。
Sojiro took the pills from her and gulped it down. Sorry, that took me even off guard. The fact that it was poison gave him no pause at all. For his roommate's tyrannical behavior, he showed no signs of standing up to it.
まったく、毒を持って毒を制するなんて、また古風な真似するな、青崎もアリスも。
Sojiro's face relaxed into a smile upon finding the funny side of the situation. You know what? I aspire to be as calm about shit as Sojiro is. Jesus Christ. Aoko was utterly dumbfounded as how he could be happy at a time like this.
今日帰りが遅れたのは、アパートまで荷物を取りに行っていたからなんだ。そういうことなら、電話の一つでもすればよかった。
荷物って、まさかそれじゃないでしょうね。
Sojiro nodded empathically as she pointed incredulously at the cardboard box in his hands.
住んでいないのに家賃を払うのはバカらしいから、今日で引き上げてきた。一応、いつでも戻れるように話はつけてあるから、3ヶ月ぐらいは大丈夫だよ。
Ah, and that way you can keep working and save up money.
家賃？あ、そっか。 私ってばなんでそんなことを忘れてたんだろう。アリスが聞いたら喜ぶわ、そりゃ。
A smile blossomed across her face, as they say. It was the open, bold-faced look of a child who just came up with a mischievous plan. Sojiro shook with fear at the thought of what that smile might bring his way.
けどずいぶん少ないのね、荷物。段ボール1箱分しかないの？
そうかな。十分多いだろう。
ちょっと前に戻ったわ。珍しく食後もここに残ってたんだけど、待ちきれなかったみたいね。
She gave Sojiro a meaningful look while continuing to smile with that sinister smile.
待ちきれなかったって何を？
そりゃあ、アリスが眠ってるのをいいことに、在庫のないフォションとブルーキャリコを勝手に使ってくれたどこかの誰かさんにお仕置きするためなんじゃない？
フォッションってあのお茶の葉？
そう、私もびっくりしたけどね。アリスがどっかで寝入るのはよくあることだけど、紅茶を用意して眠るなんてのは初めてだったから。どんな心境の変化か知りたくて起こしたら、アリスの方が驚いてたわ。
Sojiro clapped his hands together as if remembering something important. He had forgotten to clean up the tea before leaving. The regret written from forehead to chin delighted Aoko immensely.
そうか。それじゃあアリスは怒っていただろう。
当然、コマドリがとばっちりでドリブルされてたしね。
ああ、俺でも怒る。片付けをきちんとしないなんて。だらしないにも程がある。
He's mad at himself for a completely different reason. I can't believe I didn't clean up after myself. That's what he's mad at. Sojiro harshly scolded himself for his failure.
論点違う。あのね、寝顔を間近で見られたから怒ってるのよ、アリスは。
Okay, to be fair, I didn't realize that was why she was mad, but I guess that makes sense.
え？そうかな。アリスはそういうのは気にしないと思うんだけど。
I also didn't think she would care.
あんたはそうかもしれないけど、私たちは気にするの。
Ako's glare was enough to make glass shatter. There was an indescribable intensity in the way she said that.
それは青崎たち限定の話か？
世間一般での常識よ。自分が気にしないからって他人もそうだと思ってると、いつかやけどするからね。
でもそれだったらロビーで寝ているアリスにだって問題ないか？見かけたら放っておけないだろう、あんなの。
Yeah, honestly.
その心意気は立派だけど、そこはそれ。この館の持ち主は彼女だから。この洋館内であなたが出会ったあらゆる不義不始末、失敗失態の責任は宗十郎に押し付けられるの。この意味、わかる？
No. Ako's question sent Sojiro into a trance of deep thought until finally he uttered,
つまりここはアリスの自治領なんだな。
はい、よくできました。正確には私とアリスのだけどね。領主は何をやっても許されるってことよ。
Sojiro looks like he's about to crash out at any moment. He wouldn't. I don't actually think he's capable of crashing out. Because if he was capable of crashing out, he'd crash out at the moment of going, "Oh fuck, I'm about to die and this bitch is about to kill me." That's when he would have crashed out. She smiled as she spoke and plopped herself down on the sofa. Sojiro remained standing behind the sofa opposite of her, and he ran over their conversation again and again in his head. The notion of this being their kingdom made him realize he actually had no idea where the girls had come from or their family's background.
青崎、君ご両親はどうしてるんだ？
He inadvertently blurted. Reading is hard. He inadvertently blurted out this being the question foremost on his mind.
生きてるわよ。三崎町から下りに4駅行った東川ってところの地主。死は祖父だけど、今は隠居して両親と一緒の土地に住んでるわ。
そう聞くとなんだか普通の家庭だな。
Sojiro had imagined something more outrageous for family magicians.
両親はね、父さんにはあんまり魔術回路は作られなかったみたいだから、その分私には2世代分の潜在能力があるって祖父は言ってるけど、どうだか。
You took a shower and you feel better? Good.
宗十郎の期待してるような一族は どっちかっていうとアリスの方よ。私と違って
If she's from England, why the fuck does she have a Japanese last name? Aoko offered nothing more, as if to suggest that that was as far as she was willing to reveal for now. Sojiro had insisted on talking with Alice directly rather than hearing things secondhand, so chose not to go back on its word by pushing the topic further.
ま、詳しくは本人から聞きなさい。アリスの紅茶好きもそこから来てるんだし。そういえば、なんで今日に限ってリーフティーなんか入れたの？ティーバッグを使った方がまだマシだったでしょうに。
青崎がそっちの方がいいって言ったじゃないか。アリスは紅茶にうるさいって。
Aoko was momentarily at a loss for words. Maybe her parents, as both Japanese and British, perhaps considered heritage. I mean, that's obviously the reason, but like, if she's from England, how the fuck did she get out here? You know what I mean? But I mean, maybe they'll reveal that, maybe it's just not important. He seemed so oblivious most of the time, but apparently he was attentive to some details, at least selectively.
ま、いいわ。それより明日の放課後だけど、また一人で帰ってくれない？年明けの行事があるんだけど、その場しのぎで行った餅つき大会が通っちゃってさ。明日も忙しいのよ、私。
Sojiro nodded in acceptance. In fact, he had already been planning to do so before she had even asked.
それはいいけど、体は大丈夫か、青崎。昨日から寝てないだろう。
夕方に3時間ちょい仮眠を取ったから調子はいいわ。そういうあんたこそ体は持つんでしょうね。
She meant the all-night cramming session, of course. Needless to say, Sojiro was more than likely to struggle given that he, too, had not slept a wink. All he could do was give a relieved smile. He thought back to the days just after he transferred here when she was watching his every move from the sidelines and showed a startling amount of concern for him.
いいよ。どのみち苦労するのは青崎の方だし、異例中の異例はありがたく受け取っておくとしよう。
His cheery response grated on her just a little.
あんた、くだらないことだけはしつこく覚えてるんだから。
She heaved her shoulders in exasperation and dropped her head as an excuse to look away from the beaming smile on his face. I'll do this next little bit and then we'll end. Oh, never mind. This is the day after. So I think I am just going to... Let's see if he can make it home and if something happens. The following day, the last day of finals had ended without a hitch. The final December hurdle was finally a thing of the past. For all but one student, that is. Sojiro, the greatest challenge was yet to come. He bid farewell to his classmates, all jittery with excitement for the last day of term, and headed into Shiro Inuzuka Woods. The road home was no different than yesterday, like he was reliving yet another day striding up the hill. Yet today, there was a fierce determination in his steps. Today was his last chance, and he wanted nothing more than to talk to the girl. I'm concerned about that statement, Batra, but I guess I'll see it when I see it. He did not care if she was cruel to him or ignored him, nor Aoko was being truthful when she said that she could trap him in a mirror land or something like that. All he really cared about was having the chance to speak with her face to face. But nothing is ever that simple. To tell the truth, what he found upon finally entering the mansion was not wholly unexpected.
よく寝る子だな、本当。
The deja vu he was experiencing made him dizzy. Faced with the exact reenactment of previous day, he could not help but blurt out what he was thinking. Alice was sleeping by the fireplace, just as she had done yesterday. The way her legs draped to one side resembled those of a princess in a children's book. She looked more comfortable than she had the day before. Miraculously, he had a rare flash of insight that enabled him to read the situation more clearly.
学校で飛び丸は一人何をしているんだろう。
Upon glancing back at the entrance, he made the decision, took a deep breath, and rolled up his sleeves. If today was a reenactment of yesterday, then he supposed he would play along with that idea. Sojiro removed his shoes and headed for the kitchen. He was off to prepare another ill-fated pot of tea. You're still sleeping there! Since she was angry about him using the precious falcon, this time he turned to Jackson's fruit and herb brew. Sadly, this was about as much as Sojiro could manage to amend his behavior. He failed to realize that it was not the brand of tea that had landed him in hot water, but rather his incorrect brewing method. After filling the pot with tea, he carried it back to the foyer. His breath was visible in cold air as he sat himself down beside the fireplace. Sojiro took a sip of the fruity tea he prepared. Oh, fruity tea. Oh. He prepared himself and pulled his textbook from his bag. Exams were over now, but he had been instructed to take extra classes for the subjects from day one of school. Quite inevitable. The foyer was warmer than outside, but still far from comfortable. It was enough to make anyone yearn for some source of warmth. Sojiro dove into his electronics textbook in the winter-chilled hall. The class was not very popular, which is why it had been recommended to him in the first place. The fact that everyone who took it started on equal footing made it more appealing to him than other classes. He downed the rest of the tea, having no appreciation for its flavor, and refilled his cup. The tea was still warm, since the ceramic teapot had excellent heat retention. He vaguely recalled the conversations as his eyes advanced across the page. The lack of lighting in the foyer was forcing him to rely on illumination from the skylight. The light cut into the room at a diagonal angle in such a way as to divide the foyer into light and dark areas, with the fireplace in shadow. The room resembled ancient ruins covered in ash, or perhaps the quiet, forgotten world of a faded fairy tale. Time slipped on by within the white walls of this room, hidden from the sun. The minutes passed slowly for some time, until the sound of a textbook slamming shut brought the room back to reality. Snap back to reality! Sojiro stretched his stiff back and eagerly got started on clearing up. He put his textbook back in his bag, placed his cup on the tray, leaving Alice's sitting in front of her on the floor. He said unceremoniously. He spoke as if to convince himself that he had no other choice as he prepared to leave the sleepy foyer behind. But before he could, a sound behind him stopped him in his tracks. He turned around with his bag under his arm and his tray in his hands. So as to not cause even a ripple in her teacup, he greeted her.
Yeah.
In a light, easygoing manner, she remained seated next to the fireplace like a black-eyed sleeping beauty. Her face was still as a statue, almost no different than it had been in slumber. Looking at Alice now, he realized just how different she and Aoko really were. Aoko communicated her feelings openly, even if he never could quite tell where they came from. Her trademark expression of irritation would keep him guessing as to the reason she was angry, but to her credit, her emotional state was always clear. Alice, on the other hand, was completely unreadable. She might be angry, or then again sad. He could not tell either way. Her question gave him a sinking feeling in the pit of his stomach. He could not decide whether it was animosity or perplexity that he had heard in her voice. If the former, this is likely to turn into a replay of their interaction from the other night. An image of the shattered bottle sprang to his mind. Sojiro knew his response would be extremely important, and after struggling for a few minutes, he finally worked up the courage to say something. Just not the correct thing, unfortunately. He had no idea what the correct approach would be, so he simply did whatever came to his mind instead. She gave him no response. Her face said that she detested his presence, but he plowed ahead regardless. Sojiro took a seat and set down the tray once more. Their eyes met. Her inscrutable gaze was enough to turn most people away. There's no thoughts in his head whatsoever. but the target of her animosity appeared to not notice it at all.
それで
ああ、遅くなったけど、こうして話がしたかったんだ、アリスと。
Despite having suggested that it would take some time to explain, he managed to sum things up pretty succinctly.
私と会うことではなく、
ん？そうだね。青崎とはもっと話したいところだけど、それよりは3人で話してみたい。
Alice found herself out of kilter, unable to read his true intentions. Sojiro continued on, failing to notice her bewilderment.
青崎は普段からアリスとは会話がないって言うんだ。それが俺のせいなら困るし、俺のせいじゃないならもっと困る。せっかく同じ場所にいるのに会話がないなんて、もったいないと思うんだ。
Each word he spoke was heavy with emotion. Alice remained utterly unable to discern the boy's intentions. All she could parse was that there was something he wanted from her. But what could that be? What she found her even stranger was that he was not speaking to her from a place of fear.
あなたは私が怖くないの？
ああ、だってそう言えるほど、俺は君をよく知らない。
Her gleaming eyes looked like they were made of polished quartz. His response had not been what she expected. He spoke with pure honesty and unfettered truth. Unfettered truth. Such boldness, however, did not actually upset her. Their conversation ground to a halt. If you could even call it a conversation in the first place. Alice grew tense, as if displeased by the strange, comfortable moment of silence between them. Sojiro endured her cold stare, showing no sign of flinching.
私と話をしたいと言ったでしょ。なら、好きにしてみたら。
It was more a challenge than an invitation. He had neither a topic on hand nor were they intimate enough to strike up a casual conversation. Nonetheless, her challenge hanged in the air, waiting for a response.
じゃあ、あの鳥の話を。ほら、そこにいる青い鳥。たまに見かけるんだけど、君の飼い鳥か？それとも、ほら、なんて言ったかな。プロイだっけ？あの鳥もアリスの使い魔？
Her eyes let slip for a moment a very natural response. It was annoyance, such as that which one might feel toward a troublemaker.
あれもプロイだけど、私とは何の関係もないダッチョウ。ずいぶん古くからいるだけで、私もよく知らないわ。
ん？じゃあ勝手に住んでるのか？この家に。
勝手になんて、私が許すはずがないでしょ。ロビンは本当に役に立たないけど、あんなのでも母から譲り受けたものだから。失敗続きでも特別に住まわせてあげてるの。
そっか、安心した。ここに住むの役に立たなきゃダメってわけでもないんだね。
She turned away in silence to avoid looking at his hapless grin. Thus began Sojiro's very lengthy monologue. It started with his part-time job, then moved on to school. Next came the amusement park and random gossip around town, and last the subject of rent. He spent all of 20 minutes on mindless small talk. Then he ran out of things to say and finally stopped.
ごめん、アルバイトがあるから、もう行くよ。
And that was that. After finally getting in his long-awaited chance to talk to her, he realized that he had no exit plan in place. So he returned the tray to the kitchen, placed his bag in the foyer, and headed for the door. She had never seen the boy so candid, which was why, overcome with surprise, she found herself calling out to him.
待って。
She had no reason to do so, yet she called out anyway.
ん？何？
今日はポットがあったけど。
あ、うん。昨日の反省点だったから、結局使ったのは自分だけだけど。
そう。そのポットはコーヒーとの兼用だから、ハーブティーには合わないわ。
Sojiro's eyes grew wide with shock. Now he remembered that there had been all sorts of cups and teapots in the cupboard, each one specifically designed for a different type of tea.
なかなかに奥深い。あれかな。慣れないことはするもんじゃないってことか。
She let out a vexed sigh.
どうして私を起こさなかったの？
Either she had not heard what he said, or she had been waiting for this whole time for a chance to ask him that. In any case, her question abruptly interrupted his stream of thought. He fell silent with introspection. The thought of waking her had not so much as crossed his mind either that day or the previous one.
言って。起こす気も起きることも期待していなかったのは。
Her eyes were filled with animosity. Lies were useless against such an all-piercing gaze. The setting sun transformed the foyer into a battle of life or death. Lies or deceptive answers would not be permitted. Amidst the palpable tension that filled the room, where any move, wrong or otherwise, was likely to get him killed, he felt pain rather than fear. Alice's voice was icy cold, preemptively rejecting any response he was to give. The boy vaguely imagined a newborn chick that had fallen from the nest, struggling to survive on its own. It gasped, hanging on the thread of hope, yet detesting where that thread hung.
言わなきゃいけないか。
Alice nodded sharply.
じゃあ言うけど、別に深い考えがあったわけじゃない。単に寝た子を起こすのは良くないだろ。
冗談は聞いてないわ。
冗談じゃないよ。眠っているのならそのままでいいと思ったんだ。話はしたいけど、それはまた目が覚めた次の機会にするべきだって。
随分と悠長なのね。青子があなたを守るのは今日までだって聞いているけど、私に取り入る機会はこれが最後なのに。それともあれだけ忠告されておいてまだ何も分かっていないの？
He had not. He swore to her, agreed to her terms, and gone as far as to sit face to face with her to get to know her. Surely he thought this was enough to escape death. And she believed, as a mage, that his naive goodwill and simple-mindedness were all the reasons she needed to execute him. Trivial misunderstandings would only make things worse at this point.
そりゃ何もわからないよ。魔術とか魔法とか、たった数日でわかるもんか。はっきりしているのは、アリスも青崎も言ったことはきっちり守るってことだけだ。
なら、どうして？
Her gaze said what she really wanted to ask. She wanted to know why he did not beg for his life. She knew the answer. She saw the look on his face when he turned to leave without so much as trying to wake her. A look of resignation. What on earth had it meant?
どうしてって、そう言われても困る。そうだな。機会が訪れなかったのなら、それはそういうことだと思ったのかもしれない。君の寝顔はそれぐらい、なんていうか、判断に困った。青崎とは違う意味で、簡単には関われないと思ったんだ。
Sojiro struggled to find the right words, but he said what he was feeling in the moment anyway. He'd seen a sleeping witch of the wood who clearly needed someone's help, yet sought the help of no one.
でも、しずきくんは関わろうとしているのね。その機会は訪れなかったのに。
機会はやってきたよ。なんで、こっちも今日ぐらいは自分の勝手にして無茶をしたくなったんだ。
しずきくんの言う通りなら、私はあなたを拒絶するしかないのに。
まあ、そこが難しいところなんだけど。
Sojiro glanced at the entrance. He had no reason to, he just felt an urge to do so.
そこを解決したがってるのは俺だけじゃないと思うよ。
He muttered as if speaking to himself, but it was clearly meant for her to hear. Alice knew full well how poorly he had understood the situation. All of this was one giant misunderstanding on his part. His tiny gesture of goodwill, pitiful and pure, resembled that of someone reaching out to help a dying kitten. For Alice, doing so would be akin to clutching the thorns of a rose. She felt pain in her chest for the first time in quite a while.
けど私はあなたの同居を認めてはいないわ。
She addressed the floor at her feet to avoid showing him how she truly felt. If he had, he would have seen that her face looked just the way Aoko's had earlier.
だろうな。それはきっと今は解決できない問題だ。でもそのうち何かの気まぐれであっさり終わるものかもしれない。だからその時までアリスはずっと俺を嫌っていていいんだと思う。
Her gasp of breath was like a response in itself, to suggest she could keep hating him. She had once wished to hear those words so dearly, if only the once.
大体だぞ。アリスだけじゃなく、青崎も同居を認めてない節があるじゃないか。だから認めてもらうなんて意気込み自体が間違いなんだ。どうあっても俺は青崎や君たちとは違うんだし。となると、あとは我慢してもらうしかない。難しい話だけど、一緒にいても邪魔にならないぐらいなら、その可能性は上がらないか？
Thinking that, of course, it was possible, but if it were that easy, none of this would have been necessary in the first place. Alice nodded in agreement. There was no way he could have planned for things to work out this well. But his plan, in fact, had worked, if inadvertently, from the moment the conversation began.
例えばあなたが隣にいても眠っていられるぐらいに。
そうだね。例えばの話。
Beaming, Sojiro stood up and left the foyer. Alice did not stop him this time. And this is how they became co-workers. He had a newfound spring in his step as he headed to work. But something gave him a moment's
実
pause.
際、覗き見は趣味が悪いと思う。
He complained aloud to make sure a certain someone heard him. No more than 2 minutes had passed since Sojiro left the mansion when a long-haired figure came creeping into the foyer. Aoko Ozaki had been just outside the entire time eavesdropping.
帰ってたの。
With a sullen glare, Alice addressed the interloper. Aoko was shivering from head to toe after standing in the cold for so long. She deemed gloves an abomination and refused to wear them except in the most extreme cold. As a result, see, we're using the word slender again. You see how we shouldn't be doing that? As a result, her fingers were pitifully swollen and red.
ちょっと前にね。それでどうだったのアリス。随分と話してたみたいだけど。
She looked strangely elated as she blew on her hands to warm them. Alice was not fooled by Aoko's facade, clear from the ill-tempered look she wore on her face.
あなたがここまで過保護とは思わなかったわ。意地？それとも義務？
どっちかっていうと成り行きね。で、どうだったのよ結果は。気に食わなかったら実力行使に出るって言ってたじゃない。
Alice's mood was growing darker and darker the longer she had to look at Aoko's cheerful posturing. It all went back to their dinner together the previous night. After everything that happened in the foyer, Alice was both more suspicious and intrigued by Sojiro than ever before. She insisted that Aoko let him walk home alone the next day. She then used a concoction to fake her slumber and recreate the same scene as the previous day. What do you mean fake her slumber? The portion of her plan went well, but the rest had veered totally off course. It did not help to know that her roommate had savored every moment of it from the other side of the wall either. To make matters worse, Alice was frustrated at herself for letting such trivial matters bother her. She stared at the teacup still sitting on the floor. Her pale finger traced its cold
青
rim.
子の言う通り、害にはならない人ね。あくまで今のところの話だけど。
She forced a tone of indifference in order to hide her irritation with her apprentice. It was in this moment that Sojiro's fate was decided.
あら、それだけ？アリスにしては長く話してたのに。
Relentless, Aoko continued her line of questioning. Alice only stared back icily.
青子、あなた、隠していたわね。
She voiced her displeasure at Aoko's behavior in no uncertain terms. Suddenly, the air in the foyer felt cold as ice. They stared at one another, each trying to guess the other's next move.
さすがね。 よくそこに気がついたもんだわ。でも、こればかりは譲れないのよ。
Malko widened her stance and glared at Alice.
何も全て奪うとは言っていないわ。そうね。あなたにも3割ぐらいは回すつもり。
Completely unperturbed by Oko's warlike posturing, a simple look was all Alice needed to keep her roommate in check.
10が3に化けちゃ
That was a weird thing to
ちょっと
say.
黙ってらんないわね。
高望みは命取りよ、青子。
That was like, what? 30% of what? Why are we talking about stonks all of a sudden? Alice remained calm and dignified, not moving a muscle. It felt like hours passed as the two stared at each other in silence. Malko was grinding her teeth in frustration. At this rate, their alliance would be in tatters before they even confronted their foe. And worst of all, she knew Alice had the upper hand. Malko accepted her defeat with a tisk.
悔しいけど、アリスが6。私が4で手を打つわ。
It pained her to settle for less. Alice nodded in satisfaction.
そうね。家主は私だけど、彼を招いたのは青子だから。その代わり、家賃の取り立てはあなたの役割ね。
That's fucked up. Like, y'all are from big money. What the fuck?
いいけど。ああ、情けない。こんなことなら錬金術でもかじっておくんだった。
そうでもないわ。彼ら、バブルが弾けて大変だって話よ。
They were actually talking about stocks, chat. Alice spoke with the confidence of someone with first-hand experience of such matters, yet Oko only nodded absent-mindedly in response. Their bitter fight was over how to split the take of Sojiro's rent now that he was officially going to move in. Not the most becoming quarrel for a pair of mages. Forcing Boy to live with them and then demanding he pay rent was beyond extortion. It was truly vicious.
でも、そんなセリフが出るってことは、アリスもようやく認めたってことね。
Malko was triumphantly satisfied with herself.
認めてはいないけど、公園での夜、彼を結界で捕捉しなかった責任があるから。
My work when I come pull up for the next stream, add me on. For sure, Coco.
彼と約束をした青
Oh,
子だけ
on
を
Discord?
超えら
I'm
れな
not
いで
going
し
to
ょ
do that.
約束。
Malko looked up at the ceiling as she recalled the night at the amusement park. Only a week at most had passed since then, but Oko already felt that Sojiro's fate and her own had become inextricably linked, intrinsically. Or perhaps had always been connected by fate since the moment they met. She could not see into the future, so there was no way to know for sure.
ま、縁とか運とかはともかく、変だけど。
That's also not
Arashi
supposed to
has
show
rated
up.
the channel with 15 viewers.
That's also not supposed to happen. Hello, Ariel.
Hey, Arashi and Raiders. Welcome to the chaos.
So
and
many things are
Mischief with
happening that aren't
Pixie.
supposed to happen right now.
Let's have a blast together, stirring up some magical adventures and wild fun. Get ready for a roller coaster ride of laughter and surprises.
What's not supposed to happen? What's not supposed to happen was that the notifications was not supposed to go off. I was trying to make the stream more immersive by getting rid of all of my notifications, but here you go, popping them off anyway. Thank you so much for the raid. Well, if it's not gonna work anyway, here, we'll just go back to this one. I've already given you the follow, but if you're not already following Ariel Arashi, please give them a follow. What were you up to? Thank you so much for your people. Thank you for trusting me with your community. What are you up to? Same game? Oh, I assume that you're ahead of me then. I'm so excited to see someone playing it too. So the deal with this is that we already went over, I'm in spoiler zone. Well, don't worry. We're literally about to end the stream. You came right at the end. So many things you did just ruined the plans. We've played Fate, and these are obviously made by the same people who made Fate, and we've played the fighting game that this game continues into a long time ago. So I wanted to know what was going on. I just wanted to pop by and harass you. Well, I appreciate the harassment, Ariel. name Ariel makes me want to say it like Sebastian from Little Mermaid. This is recommended to me by a friend. This is recommended to me by Steam. I didn't realize this game existed in the sense of Under the Sea. I did not know that this game was a prequel to Melty Blood, or Tsukihime if you will. Well, I mean, if you guys want to see more of the game, be sure to give me a follow. I also upload all of my streams to YouTube, so if you guys want to see my specific reactions to stuff, there's a link to my to the archive channel. I also have a main channel that I sometimes upload to. And I guess I'll figure out what the hell is going on, because I tried to make it more immersive, but here we are still getting notifications and shit. I'll figure that out later. But yeah. Thank you so much. I've already given you a follow, like I said, but please give Ariel a follow. Obviously, they have taste if they're playing the same game that we were. Happy to cause you some problems. Happy to receive them. A thought uttered to herself in self-confirmation more than Alice. More than to Alice. I don't know how much longer you're gonna go. We're as soon as I think the chapter is about to end, so as soon as we hit the chapter, we're gonna end. But I hope whatever is to come and the story is good for you is good. I already know it's gonna be good, and you have a good rest of your stream. Thank you so much. I appreciate it, and hopefully I'll see you during one of your streams. Alice could only look on in annoyance, perhaps in an attempt to voice her displeasure at her comment.
青子、あの傷を知ってる？
傷？
Alice raised her. Okay. Can we stop using the word slender? 3 times. 3 times in this one stream. Alice raised her thin fingers to her mouth as if to push the words back in. She had blurted it out. She had blurted it out in the heat of the moment. A secret that no one else was supposed to know, but with that which one couldn't keep her to herself. Malcolm tilted her head in confusion. Alice looked relieved for some reason. Her sudden antipathy towards Aoko had dissipated as well.
幸せな人
said Alice as she took a sip of her cold tea. She made no attempt to explain who was fortunate or why. A moment later, her beautiful face contorted in revulsion. She abandoned the cup to the floor once more. Her black dress unceremoniously scrunched up as she stood. Just one sip of the underbrewed tea. It's underbrewed? How did he underbrew it? Sent her fleeing into the drawing room to remove the bad taste from her mouth. And soon she was gone. Aoko hesitatingly took the teacup in her hands. It was almost certainly better left untasted, but she could not help but wonder how Sojiro's tea could arouse such a strong response. After one small sip, she returned it quietly to the floor.
だからティーバッグにしろって言ったのに、あのバカ。
The expression on her face was nearly identical to that of her roommates. There it is. All right, now we can end. All right, let's see here. Let's see if someone else is playing. Nope, just me. Soka. Damn, I don't know who to raid out to. All right, let's take a suggestion. Anyone got a suggestion who to raid out to? as if you had to come back to the virtual novel. I'm just happy my voice didn't give out. Oh, you know what? I got someone. Let's see here. There we go. All right, we're gonna bring the party over to ZLI. They're new. We met them a couple months ago, so we never actually got the chance to say hi to them. All right, so we're gonna bring the party over there. Make sure you say hello, be nice, be kind, all of that good stuff. And I will see you guys. I probably won't stream tomorrow, but I will see you guys Wednesday for Kamen Rider Wednesdays. Yeah, I'll see you guys then. Later.